in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 won't you let the light shine through. In the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you.
Fight the greatest battle. You need the greatest warriors. But heroes must be forged in ultimate combat, competing for the ultimate prize.
and welcome to the TES Arena Valor League, brought to you by Tesseract Esports and Tencent Games. My name is iRequestedUl, and joining me once again, I have
the one and only Luxure. I just wanted to drop my IGN there, but I figured it will be too plain.
Well, with that, we have nothing except the extraordinary for today, as we are here with the third place and grand final matchups. But before we get into that, the teams we have are the top four. They fought between 32 teams to get here, and they're fighting for a prize pool of 19,000 rupees and 10,000 vouchers. So if you'd like to give a little rundown of how exactly these four teams made it here.
Well, just a quick look at the bracket. So what we saw yesterday would be that of the semifinals, right? So the brackets will be on your screen right now. And from the semifinals, we saw MeetYourMakers going up against NatusVanguard. Obviously, MeetYourMakers won, moved on into the finals to go up against ExDee Gaming, whom were going up against Team Unknown yesterday, who lost, and thus will be going up against NatusVanguard in the third place match.
Yep, and so speaking of those matchups for today, we will have that third place match coming up first, which is NatusVanguard going up against Team Unknown, followed by the grand finals, but looking between ExDee Gaming and MeetYourMakers. But looking a bit closer into that first match of the day, I'll allow you to go through the rosters of each team.
Right, so quickly going through the roster, coming through from the side of NatusVanguard as the observer, we have Big Paws, Offlaner, Shashang Jake, Mage, aka Marksman, Clash P, Jungler, Ash, and the two subs, Bowls and Fuse. For the side of Unknown, we have Ulos as observer, Blaze, Offlaner, Arpan, Mage, SK, Marksman, and Cux for Jungle, and Antidote as the sub.
Yep, so for this first matchup of today, it was actually a fairly close one, I'd like to say, between NatusVanguard and MeetYourMakers, especially in the second game. NatusVanguard, from what I've observed of their gameplay, it seems to be that they have a fairly decent early game. They just struggle to transition that into mid and late, where it seems they can't really take the objectives necessary to really continue on into the base. But with that, we will jump quickly into the first draft of today. We'll see what Team Unknown throw right back at them. So coming up with bans, looking like a possible Superman ban, which isn't surprising at all. And I would probably call something of a Zephyr's ban in retaliation.
Red team's turn to ban.
Yep, Zephyr's or Joker will
turn
be
to pick.
the primary bans right now, but then Unknown obviously going for the Joker.
Red team's turn to pick.
NatusVanguard definitely will be picking up the Zephyrs for themselves. But with that, NatusVanguard actually, you know, will have to go in for a comp that's not very comfortable with, like we were talking about yesterday. So they'll probably go for that Violet Slims combo like we saw yesterday. And for the side of Team Unknown, however, with that Zephyrs getting picked up, they picked up Azil and Lindis.
Yep, and there's the Violet you mentioned. I mean, the Zenial going alongside it is not a bad choice at all. We saw Zenial played to great success at yesterday's games, and just that top lane pressure as well as the global pressure he provides and the support capabilities for your team. It's just such a great top lane pick, in my opinion, and obviously in a lot of these pro teams' opinion, as it fits right in with the meta. Alongside that, we see picks like Praetor and Lumber. And looking over for the side of Team Unknown, they've gone with Thane, L'Oreal, and Lindis. They're going to finish their team off with what looks like to be a Crash, and that isn't a bad idea. Oh, they do need a front line to go alongside that of Thane, as well as some good CC to initiate with when it comes along to the ultimate, the metamorphosis coming out from that Crash.
All right, so quickly looking through the matchups that we saw, like you mentioned earlier on, Zephyr's, Violet, Zenial, Praetor, and Lumber picked up by the side of NatusVanguard Gaming. NatusVanguard, as for the side of Team Unknown, we are seeing Zil, Lindis, L'Oreal, Crashed, and Thane. So with this matchup, you know, coming through, I'm expecting a lot more early game pressure coming out from the side of Team Unknown, whereas for the side of NatusVanguard, they will have to wait for a little, but to let Violet scale. They do not have a Slims this time round, and with that in mind, it is quite telling that, you know, NatusVanguard from yesterday's matches and even the matches before that, they're not very good with a mid-late game. They just lose control after that. So picking out a comp like that, they really need to wait to scale. So if they can pull it off, I think they have a better looking team comp overall. I mean, they have Zephyrs for the early game to be able to just harass, if not then take down kills, try to snowball. They have Zenial that you said have the global presence with the healing and the shield. As for the side of Team Unknown, what do you personally think? I mean, they have a Zill, they have a Linda. Zill do not work very well in that early game. However, he has great damage in that late game.
Well, I think overall they've got good balance in their team comp. They've got the front line, as well as they're going to obviously have Lindis on the back line, possibly put in the mid or that of Zill. Either way, what way they go about it, I think that they have a decent team comp that when it comes to either roaming and patrolling, then they're going to have some good gank CC potential there to secure some early kills, or maybe even just starting to take control game. But we'll have to see how they play it out as we go into the first game of today between NatusVanguard and Team Unknown. So they are fighting for that third place spot. Still a lot on the line between these two teams. And we see, at least for side of Natus, looking for a possible invade, but I think they're going to play it safe. It's just going to be the Lumber out there patrolling, making sure there is no counter invade, and each team playing a fairly passive early game per se.
Yep, they are definitely going in for the more passive early game, as we see now Clash P on their Violet no longer holding that of the mid lane. Instead, we'll be going down into the bottom lane alongside Lumber. And I mean, Violet just does so well, just do so very well in that bot lane because of the amount of poke they can put up against that of Lindis. As we can see now, Clash P just putting up so much pressure in this early game up against Lindis and this Thane. And there's really nothing, you know, the side of Team Unknown can do at this point in time except for wait, right? Lindis does well because of the vision that she provides to her team, but at the end of it all, the early game burst that Violet has, Lindis just has got no match whatsoever.
Yeah, now that is why I was assuming that maybe we'd see the Lindis in the mid, but I completely forgot about the L'Oreal on that team, so it makes sense the way that decided to spread out their team comp. However, just looking at this overall, I really get the feeling NatusVanguard have picked up a better team comp for themselves. And it's as you say, as long as they're going to be able to transition through the mid game into late, that's really where it's going to hold up for them. Especially, you mentioned Clash P on that Violet already doing a lot of work just up against that of the L'Oreal and the Thane, but it's going to be so much more important for them to get to that point in the late game where they can really be built up. We see the first Abyssal Dragon going over to NatusVanguard. No surprise there. They've never really been a team that's been behind on that. They've been on top of that, at least in terms of the early game.
Yep, and now we do see a little
bit of an invade coming through from the side of NatusVanguard, but there's going to be retaliation coming through from Thane, and Zill jumping over the wall just for the escape. He will be caught out by Clash P for the first blood. Clash P continuing on, trying to land some damage onto the Cylinders. It's going to be the 1v1 trade out, but he misses the skill shots. Still winning it out, as you mentioned. There's really nothing that the L'Oreal can do against Van. Just look at the range they have to poke the enemy from outside the turret range itself, and surely in a very comfortable position already, sitting at 6.5k over to 5.8, and will be happy to have got that first blood alongside the Abyssal Dragon.
Yep, and one interesting thing to note as well was that, you know, before the Praetor was picked up, the side of Team Unknown actually prioritized. Wait, let me actually see whether they actually prioritized that or not. Yes, they actually prioritized L'Oreal over that of Praetor. And this is something, maybe they're just not very comfortable on that Praetor, and they do, you know, prefer L'Oreal as a whole. Well,
we're going to see a bit of an engagement up here on the top lane. A bit of a gank, 2v1, nothing that can be done for Zenio. So that's a good trade-off for at least the side of Team Unknown to get that through. They might even get a fair bit of damage onto that top tower if there's no response, because right now we see a lot of attention down here in the bot side. There's going to be Lumber with the ultimate, game the knock-up, and Flash P trying to stay safe on that backline, game the damage through, but Lumber just eating up too much in the early game will go down as well. And so Team Unknown starting to kick back at least and have a bit of success there, especially with the timing they go on that. Abyssal Dragon is up now. However, it doesn't look like they're quite ready to go for it.
Yep, they may not be ready, but as bringing back to my point, as we see in this mid laning phase, that L'Oreal just clears lane much slower compared to, say, Praetor. So that is one thing that, you know, usually when you look at team comps and you want to balance out the team comps in such a manner where, you know, you have a fast clearer in one of the lanes, you have a slower clearer in another lane that you can basically give up, or pretty much the suicide lane. Whereas for what Unknown is doing right now is that they are just going for, you know, heroes that they're more comfortable on, rather, and instead of actually trying to balance out the team comp as a whole.
Yeah, I get what you mean there, and that's probably why when we look at this, NatusVanguard definitely look like they have the better team comp lined up for themselves overall. And it's just the way they've decided to pressure this one as well. Although Team Unknown were, I wouldn't say lucky to get those 2 kills to themselves, but definitely it's not really going to make that much of a difference because they could not get any objectives off the back of it. Abyssal Dragon was up, but they decided not to take the risk, and we'll see how that pays off for them now as a fight breaks out next to the Abyssal Dragon. Clash P going to be on that backline there, but Zill jumping right through to the enemy backline. He will get taken out by that Praetor who rotated down. And so many people on the side of Team Unknown are low, but they're going to take out the Lumber before it goes down. Praetor with the poke coming through is able to pick up another kill for himself. But meanwhile, Clash P not even taking any damage himself, and it looks like Zephyr's still in that fight, able to pick up the final kill. In fact, the ace for the side of NatusVanguard, and they will be the ones to claim the Abyssal Dragon. So you just see how the dominance and the understanding of what they want in the early game is paying off for them, and how to play the early game. That I see this is a really possible match for NatusVanguard to carry on through, but it isn't the first time we've seen them do well and then let it fall. Well,
it's not the first time we see them do well, but never this well. Really, with their team comp, I said earlier on, you know, with that, you know, Violet usually very late scaling, but then with the Zephyrs and with the Praetor, when you actually pick those heroes out, what happens that your early game burst is just insane, right? You can just, like we saw in the previous team fight itself, just be able to just hold back in the back lines and just do plenty of damage without even, you know, breaking a sweat. And that's the thing about, you know, team comp coming through from the side of NatusVanguard. It is just so very strong in terms of burst, right? DPS wise, obviously you have Lindis, and you know, don't get me wrong, the team fight before the Abyssal Dragon take, it was a very good Valiant charge that came out from Thane. However, it was not good enough because, you know, on the side of NatusVanguard, we are seeing you know, we are seeing just so much CC, and on top of that, so much burst coming through as well. Even Ashe, we saw Zill actually jumping into the back lines, trying to take out Ashe on the Zephyrs, but failed because of the lack of burst.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. They just weren't able to secure on any kills, and now we see that of the Zill diving in underneath that turret is able to pick up the kill, and that's a bit of a different situation for the side of Team Unknown. However, it is the question of how meaningful are these kills going to be, as the rest of, or half of NatusVanguard are going to rotate down to try get some return damage and defend that bomb tower, my bad.
Yeah, but now we do see Lindis actually coming back down to try to save or, you know, be part of this team fight. And one of the heroes that, you know, we haven't quite talked about is actually You Lost, right? The Crash, that metamorphosis then was a pretty good one, able to push Violet back, but that actually gives Violet so much more advantage in general, because pushing Violet back means that your team, you know, it'll be difficult for your team to latch on to Violet, and thus putting down the needed damage. And as you can tell, NatusVanguard is actually doing very well for themselves, actually taking the mid-tier turret already. And Team Unknown, it's really looking hard to soften this gold lead that, you know, the side of Natus has. But we just have to wait till the mid-late game and see whether or not NatusVanguard can actually carry on, or, you know, the side of Unknown can find a team fight that will work for them.
Yep, well, we're very soon transitioning into that mid-game, and it looks like Ash on that of the Zephyrus is going to rotate down to the bot lane and try put some pressure down. Meanwhile, Clash P trading out with the Lindis, and very well, taking very minimal damage in return, but there's going to be the Zill to pick up the kill once again, and that's really what NatusVanguard have to focus on, making sure they peel for Clash P to get stay alive in those fights and get that damage down. But they are going to go for that third Abyssal Dragon. They will lose the top tower for it, but I definitely think it's worthwhile in this situation. As you mentioned, a bit of a suicide lane, that you have to make one lane the priority, and one will obviously lose out in this kind of situation. And you can see that focus very much being here on the bot lane. At least they're trying, but Kux on that Thane doing a very good job of defending.
That trade-off between Lindis and Violet, Lindis might actually win because Violet's roll has a cooldown, right? So every single time she rolls, she gets an empowered basic attack that's pretty much like a burst. Issue is that we saw Zaniel just drops and came down with an ultimate, granting all of them a very, very big heal and a damage reduction as well. So that is one thing that, you know, Zaniel is really good for, just jumping in, popping by from nowhere, granting that recovery, a burst of recovery, and on top of that, the damage reduction. So that is one thing that maybe the side of a Team Unknown really have to latch on, just basically know about before they actually go into any form of team fights, because the presence of Zaniel will always be there. It's either they have Crash to force Zaniel out of lane.
Oh, well, there's going to be the engagement coming through from NatusVanguard. Whether we see that Zaniel decide to use the port down is going to be the question. It's not needed right now, as NatusVanguard are winning out in terms of damage, but there's going to be the Metamorphosis in retaliation, and they're going to go on through. But there's the Zaniel joining in on the fight. A bit too late to save Lumber, but soon enough to save the rest of the team as they win out, picking up 2 more kills for themselves. And surely this bottom lane tower to follow. They have the damage to just dive on in under. And Zill has been quite an important part for the team comp of Team Unknown. He's been able to pick off key targets. The only problem is that the overall team fight is very much going in favor of NatusVanguard. But we will see Zill go into a 1v3, trying to do what he can. Maybe a bit of a misplay there on his behalf as he gets taken down by Clash P and the rest of NatusVanguard who were there. Praetor, meanwhile, in the mid lane, has put a lot of pressure on this tier 2 turret. Clash P probably going to be able to finish that tower off, and they will just roll on out of there. So NatusVanguard, this is the difference we see in kills coming through. They get so much out of it in terms of objectives, and this is what I really felt like yesterday when watching them was their problem. We saw them get so many early kills, but they couldn't quite transition that into objectives, and today it's a completely different statement here as NatusVanguard showing us what they're really made of and bringing it through for that possible 3rd place spot.
Yep, so NatusVanguard definitely, you know, putting up a different show as compared to what we saw them do yesterday. But okay, now it's, you know, it's reaching into the late game. Dark Slayer is up, and a lot of towers have been pushed. Total 5 towers down across the map. But at this point in time, what's the difference between, you know, Team Unknown and MeetYourMakers yesterday was that MeetYourMakers knew what they wanted and how they should actually play that mid to late game. Whereas the side of Unknown, what they're basically doing right now is succumbing to whatever that NatusVanguard is going to do, and thus unable to find anything whatsoever.
Yeah, well, there's going to be Ash on the Zephyrus, possibly caught out between 4 members on the side of Team Unknown, but in a similar situation, the Zill will be caught out between Clash P and Fuse. So when it comes to terms of resources, it looks like we have a bit of a disconnect. I was wondering about that Praetor. It did seem a bit off. It looks like he's got some internet issues there, but hopefully that will be fixed in time, because right now it is very important. This is very much the transitionary period that you mentioned, whether NatusVanguard can go and take, per se, the Dark Slayer buff and make use of it and continue to push those high ground towers. And if not, I'm sure being a man down will definitely be quite the hindrance, even though they're ahead of Team Unknown. Team Unknown have a chance for comeback as long as they find the pickoffs and when Natus is separated and such.
I mean, just looking at it right now, it is only a mere 5k difference, say 5.6k difference. But although it may be a large one, but down to AOV as a game itself, what really matters most is that late game. If you find a good team fight, basically pick someone off, like what the side of Unknown did on Zephyr's, then enforce a team fight, after which you can easily just will come out on top of the team fight and eventually be able to secure yourself the Dark Slayer or the Abyssal Dragon and then push your lead from there. Because to be quite honest, even if your man goes down, like say the Crash goes down in that late game team fight, it doesn't matter because everyone have used that expired all their abilities onto this Crash, and thus he goes down, and your team still has their abilities up, and now Fuse.
Well, Crash going to walk into that bush, and the Lumber and Crash trade out some damage there. Looks like they will be trying to move on in onto Team Unknown. NatusVanguard's going to be the initiators on this one. Zenial in the front line. There's going to be the Zephyr's coming around the side. Meanwhile, they notice that Zil is not a part of this team fight. They're trying to push for what they can, but there's going to be the Metamorphosis to push them back into the wall, landing the stun as well. L'Oreal very low under turret is going to get dived by the Zephyr's. Meanwhile, Zil in chasing down that of the Praetor. I'm not sure if that's the correct target, as the Clash P still left alive, very low on HP, but able to dish out the damage necessary to help his team win this team fight. However, here comes Zil back in full health, and there's going to be the retreat from the side of Team Unknown. And it looks like a fairly even trade out overall for each team, I'd say. They both lost 2 members, being their, actually not being their tanks, but for the side of Natus and Team Unknown, that was fairly even. And now we see that Zil probably going to get caught out, as he figured that NatusVanguard were done already, but they are not. They are pushing on through to this top tier tower, this top tier 1 tower. And they will probably make a rotation down to Darkslayer. I'm not sure if the 3 of them can do it, but they may as well start.
Well, I mean, you have a Valor on your team. You have plenty of damage. And on top of that as well, you have Zenial and Lumber that will be able to just tank up and soak up the damage coming through from the Darkslayer. But they might just, they will be getting that Darkslayer. And now with this buff, they can easily push into base, right? Like I mentioned earlier on, the goal difference isn't huge, right? But if Zil will continue making mistakes like this, I mean, it's a very small mistake chasing after a target that's not within the team fight itself, and then going way too far, and after which actually getting caught out. It is not a huge mistake, but then in this late game, it is one of those game-breaking ones. So
yeah, you definitely pointed out the what's going on here between Team Unknown and NatusVanguard in terms of target prioritization and positioning. And I think it also goes through to say, we'll hold on to that for maybe end of game talk as we see it possibly closing in here. There's going to be Metamorphosis to open up, but it's going to be the whole team comp of Team Unknown just getting dove upon, and no one on the side of Natus is going to go down in return. They're going through just one by one, cleaning up, starting off with the Lindis and ending with the Zil. That's going to be the ace. That's going to be game number 1 for the side of NatusVanguard, and what a game to see from Natus as opposed to yesterday's game. They're very much cleaned up on their strategies. They look like a very much different team, and if they had played this way yesterday, possibly could have made it through to the grand finals. But either way, it is great to see them in this kind of shape and form.
Well, now the dilemma still stands, right? Whether or not you ban out Zephyr's, or you just ban out Joker again, right? So this is one thing that maybe the side of Unknown have to reconsider coming into this game. But just looking quickly, reflecting this team fight, Metamorphosis use, not a great one, maybe just to deter them, not thinking that they will actually dive into base. And we see now Blaze, the first one to fall. Lindis cannot create a space whatsoever, and the next would be Arpan. And then now you see almost the entire team is just falling apart because there is no consistent damage, there is no burst whatsoever. And the last, like you mentioned, would be that of Thane. So Thane goes down, and that is the ace, double kill for Clash P, and that is basically the call right there, right? So with that team fight in mind, we mentioned a lot of times that, you know, Crash's metamorphosis is important. Yeah, maybe with the use of metamorphosis, you are trying to deter your enemies from coming into your base, but then honestly, they really have nothing to lose, right? A turret isn't there, nothing else is there but your core, right? They will have to fight through all of you in order to get to your core, and they will do it. I mean, they have the goal advantage, they have the damage as well.
Yeah, I think the best use of Metamorphosis, if possible, is to use it for that offensive purpose, because you need to use it and then make use of that small window of opportunity when you have the enemy stunned up. But because it's defensive should rarely be a reserve purpose and a last minute kind of strat, which is what looked like there. But as you mentioned, Team Unknown didn't really seem to be so composed throughout the whole game, and this was the downfall when I think what made NatusVanguard themselves shine so much, and why their strategy was pulled off so well, and the fact that Clash P on the Violet could get through to such a strong late game. And it also goes to say the positioning in team fights and such is a part of that compositional misstructure, perhaps, and that when we look at those team fights, even though they traded out evenly prior to that Darkslayer, that is a perfect example of when the side of NatusVanguard would not really necessarily win a team fight, but they'd still get so much more out of it, and overall that is winning the game.
I am, however, actually very, very proud of NatusVanguard. Yesterday's game, I was saying they should put Violet in that bot lane, and in today's game, they actually placed Violet in the bot lane, and we see why. Most marksmen, you know, are placed in that bot lane, and then Violet is one of the strongest ones out there. High burst, yes, you do lack the consistent damage over time or the DPS per se, but you have very, very high burst that can make up for it. Your role is on a relatively short cooldown after all, so you can make full use of it if you really want to. So really, really good players coming out from Clash P. Sorry, I kept calling you a one-trick joker. That is an open apology. But even then, he played spectacularly well in the bottom lane, able to put so much pressure, so much so that the other lanes can as well push, because you know, they don't have to worry whatsoever about the bot lane.
Yep. Well, with that, we'll have to see what composition they put through for this next match, whether Clash P will be allowed to play as Joker or not. It's going to be interesting as we jump on in, and with the side for, I believe, Team Unknown, they're going to actually go with the Murad ban. And this is interesting. They didn't need to ban Joker because they could also pick up Joker themselves, but they didn't need to ban Murad because, look, there's going to be the Joker pick, at least, that I thought they would pick up. And the question is now, while Zephys will probably fall into the hands of NatusVanguard again, but they're going to at least pick up that Violet. There's the likely Zephys, but they're not sure if they want to go Zephys or Zenio, I would imagine. I think it's going to be on that Zephys. It's too good to give up. And you talked about this, whether they would ban out the Zephys. Now, I understand Murad's still in the meta as well, and a great pick, but by doing this, I knew they wouldn't ban Joker because they could just pick up Joker themselves and then deny it from Clash P. I'm just not so sure about that Murad ban, but Evo, the rest of the team comp, is falling in within the meta structure.
Yep. Okay, maybe not Pura or Paina.
At least for the side of Team Unknown, I should say.
Yeah, at least...
No, it looks like they're going to go for that of the Crash and the Zenio. Why not? Crash alongside the Zephys is going to be a great front line for them. Last time, I believe they had the Lumber alongside the Zephys, so fills a similar role, whereas you have the knock-up from the Lumber. In this case, you have that Metamorphosis as the CC, the AoE CC, in fact, that comes through for them. And I like that Zenio was picked up back on that team. It's a very similar team comp. If they wanted to finish it off in complete, they would have had to pick up the Praetor, but Praetor no longer does leave them to go. So this is a pick I personally have not seen before. So would you like to enlighten us on maybe why they decided to go for it?
The Maganga pick. Well. Okay, I'll be honest with you. So I played AOV during the beta stages, the beta stages. So even before AOV was roughly popular, right, across Southeast Asia. And Maganga previously was a really, really strong hero, right? You have heal you're basically a support, right? You have excellent heal. Firstly, you have excellent damage over time because of your poison, and then if you stack your poison up, you have absolutely insane burst as well. But they've obviously tuned Maganga to the extent where you can no longer delete an enemy at 3/4 health. Yes, you used to be able to do that, right? Just delete the enemy. You can no longer do that. But even then, thinking about it, I mean, Alice is still on the table. Alice is an excellent support. Obviously, Alice doesn't have a heal, but you have Zenio on your team already, so you don't really need that heal anymore. You could have picked a more, aggressive mage, but say, maybe Illumia. Illumia is an aggressive mage, someone that can actually help you out. If not, then Gina. We saw a couple of Ginas before, or Natalia, right? To fit into this particular team comp itself, you didn't really have to go for the Maganga. So it does kind of it makes me puzzled as to why Maganga is chosen over the other mages. Maybe because one of the players there are just so very good at Maganga. But let's take a look at Unknown's team comp. So what they have lined up is Joker, Lumber, Praetor, that of Thane, and Lindis. So it's double ADC comp. I don't know what to feel about this. Joker's probably going to be in the mid lane, and then you have Lindis at the bottom lane. But then, in the previous team comp itself, it's in the previous game itself, they ran as something very, very similar, but then it cannot out damage whatever that Violet is putting out or Zephys itself.
Yeah, well, we will have to see just how it plays out as we jump into game number 2 of match 1 between that of NatusVanguard and Team Unknown. Natus taking the first game, and we'll just see how they play this one, especially eyes on that Maganga, as you mentioned, used to be quite toxic indeed, and we'll have to see how much poison he can dish out this game, how much burst he's got in the barrel. But with that, looking back at just a reiteration of the Team Unknown comp that you mentioned, that they have the Lindis, Praetor, Lumber, Joker, Thane comp. They have good frontline as well as good backline poke, and of course, I think that the fact with Lindis this time they've gone and put in the jungle is a much better decision. Of course, they have the I was going to say, of course, they have the Joker, and I was expecting to look down to the bot lane and see the Joker there, because I figured, well, why not match ADC against ADC? But instead, they just decided we don't want our Lindis to get so horrifically harassed by Clash P on that Violet, so instead we'll put her in the jungle. How do you feel about this?
Well, Lindis jungle is an acceptable pick, right? But you do not scale as well as, say, the other assassins, right? You have your burst, granted you can clear fast like we are seeing here, but you just do not have the burst like that. I'll say Zephys or Murad in general, and Eulos will be going in.
Yep, just taking a bit of poke there, and it looks like I'm more worried about the bot lane coming out from Team Unknown. You've got the Thane and the Lumber. Of course, they'll be able to tank up a lot more damage against that Violet, but Violet is one of those heroes you mentioned, doesn't have consistent damage, but has high burst damage, and in that creates this very, I guess, it wouldn't be called consistent, but you have that pressure in lane, and it's that poke that you can apply to the enemy team that is so reliable. And look at this, NatusVanguard more than likely going to be able to take away the first Abyssal Dragon, so doing very good in the early game once again. But not only that, they deterred Team Unknown away from doing it themselves, and I feel like for Team Unknown to not let the side of NatusVanguard get into such a comfortable position as last time, they need to be more willing to make those risky plays in the early game and contest for such objectives.
Yep, and this is what I'm talking about. Lindis would never be able to just say, oh, let's start the Abyssal Dragon. I've got enough damage to take it down, and as long as you guys aid me. Unlike the other assassins or the other junglers out there, where they can just easily start big objectives like the Dark Slayer, like the Abyssal Dragon, without taking all too much damage. And this is the clear difference between both of the team comp, right? At this point in time, the side of NatusVanguard, they have Clash P on that Violet. They have a Crash just babysitting Clash P as well. So just very tanky, very good comp right at the bottom lane. And in the top lane, you have Zenial, who can basically just roam around the map. And there's really nothing that Joker can possibly do as well, because you know, as an ADC, Joker can never be able to poke down a tank.
But somehow, it's going to be the side of Team Unknown. Lumber First Blood onto Fab Clash P, and the turnaround onto the Crash. They get 2 for 0, and that is a great trade out for the side of Team Unknown. Although we did see this previously happen in the first game, they get these kills in the early, and they get these trade outs, but it really doesn't mean so much for the side of Unknown. I won't say it means nothing, but it just isn't as much as what NatusVanguard can squeeze out of such kills and the opportunities they're given off the back of them. So I'm not too sure how that fight broke down. It looked like, obviously, Clash P on the Violet and Crash got caught out while roaming up to mid lane, and just bad time, bad place. But look at this. The Praetor roam to the top side, and this is what I want to see from Team Unknown. They are being more aggressive and more served with their plays and putting their resources to better use. Now, the second thing I would expect is if they could rotate and stop this Abyssal Dragon take, but NatusVanguard are very much onto it. We mentioned this before. They are not a team to slip up on such early game chances and opportunities, such as that Abyssal Dragon, and they will be the ones to take it. But I'm not sure about this engage coming through by Zephys. He will dive in onto that Lindis on the backline, but she's able to find the safety of her tower. Meanwhile, Fane, taking up all the damage, will be the one to go down as the sacrifice for Team Unknown. And Joker has taken the time to put a tiny bit of pressure on the mid lane tower. So not a bad move at all, but it looks like he is going to go very low on HP himself and will be the next to fall.
Yep, and so we are seeing right now, besides that team fight that went very, very well for the side of NatusVanguard, they were able to secure an objective. On top of that, possibly this mid-tier turret, ooh, Zenial going very, very low, will be able to get away, and the bottom tier turret as well with Clash and with Crashed and Clash P on it, it will be falling very, very soon. So this Maganga mid lane, I'm still kind of shaky. I do not know what to think about it. I mean, at this point, he hasn't quite shown anything just yet, but just to linger around in that of the mid lane, he do not have a high burst of damage after all. So I think what he can do is provide the support.
Might see Maganga come into play here, but the team doesn't even need him. NatusVanguard cleaning up that Fane, who just dived on in too deep, gets punished by that of the Crash ultimate coming on through the stun, and then the rest of the team of the damage. But it might be returned in terms of tanks. There's going to be the Crash falling to that of Praetor, but it looks like Lumber, a bit of miscommunication without his team, isn't really going to get much done. However, he might get the bait coming in through, whether Zephys and Maganga have the burst damage to take them down, and it looks like they'll at least pick up the Lindis. They follow through the triple kill, and this is why you don't hand over the Zephys. And it was a pick that you mentioned at the end of last game. You were very much worried about whether NatusVanguard would give that or get that pick onto Ashe again, and they did. And we see the strength of it, because I think in that last game, when it came to key damage output, you really had to give it to Zephys in the front line and Clash P on that Violet in the...
Well, yeah, and now NatusVanguard a third Abyssal Dragon for themselves. So I think what Maganga really provided there is... I guess it's slow poke from Maganga, the damage over time, I guess. I mean, he didn't quite use his ultimate detonation at all. He didn't pick up any kills for himself. All he did was the assist.
Yep, and it looks like Joker might get caught out, but instead it's going to be the turnaround onto that Zenial, and Clash B should be able to roll away from that. I don't think there will be any trade out coming through from Natus, but you can see in the second game, at least Team Unknown have slowed the progression of NatusVanguard in terms of that snowball happening. And I think NatusVanguard's starting to struggle a bit more, in fact, of pulling off such a clean game as they did last time.
Yep, they might be, but at this point, I mean, looking at mid lane itself, NatusVanguard is now actually rotating as a team, so it's looking very, very well for them. I mean, they are playing like how they should be, so I'm not all too worried for them at this point, as long as they, you know, the side of Team Unknown do not get pickoffs, because pickoffs are the most dangerous thing for NatusVanguard right now. Their team comp really must work as a whole, right? You have the Crash cannot die first, you have Maganga with insane healing, so he cannot go down first as well.
Okay, but it's going to be up to Team Unknown to try and initiate. This is coming on through, though, as retaliation from NatusVanguard. The Crash actually able to turn around that baited fight, and they managed to pick up 3 kills for themselves, following through onto that Valor. I don't think they have the damage to take him down under tower, but they could do for Praetor, forcing him to blink out of there, and they might give up that tier 2 mid tower. Lumber still in the front line. It knows he can tank up a fair bit more, and is trying to just make sure that, at least this is what I see from Team Unknown, they're not giving up the fights and objectives so easily. There's the turnaround. They pick up both that of the Zenial and the Violet, and they're following through, trying to get the Crash. I think they'll be able to do so in the end, but no, Crash makes it back to the hill next to his tower. And interesting enough, they went for a bit of a greedy play. You could call it greedy, you could call it risk, but Zethys on the side of NatusVanguard actually started up that Darkslayer over meanwhile, whereas they could have put their attention to that middle tier 2 tower and then as a team rotate to the Darkslayer. And I think this is what you said. NatusVanguard, they're looking good because they're sticking through as a team, but it's these moments where they get caught out not as a full team and not at their full strength that is making them start to lose this game.
Honestly, in that particular team fight, what really happened then was that Maganga just went down really for nothing. I mean, he wasn't part of the team fight really at all, and when he was part of it, he just dies anyways, right? Because he didn't have the burst firstly. Granted, you can heal from the back lines, but if we are going to give you so much resources in that of the mid lane, I do not just expect you to heal. I want your damage, I want your contribution to the team, if at all. I mean, at that point, NatusVanguard was actually winning as well, but they had to go in for the greedy plays. They had to go in for the second tier mid turret.
Well, it looks like a Team Unknown with the Darkslayer buff are going to go in. That's a great use of the Metamorphosis to keep half the team off and deter them from this team fight, knowing that Violet is in the mid lane. Meanwhile, they've got Zethys up in top, so a 3v5 situation in terms of resources, very much working out for them. Clash B will be able to take that away. Now needs to try and find the safety of the Zethys, otherwise it's going to be all but doom for them, and there's going to be the engagement. Zenial jumping on through, but not enough to save that of Clash B. Joker already scaling into that late game, but he still is fairly squishy. However, Zenial not able to find the kill and will get turned on by the rest of Team Unknown. So a very back and forth situation, but the jump over wall might be enough to save him. The question is, will he get caught out by any more CC? And no, he finds his safety with the rest of his team in his own jungle. So it is overall, I would say that's a win for NatusVanguard. They traded out one tower, and that being the tier 1 tower for the high ground tower in the mid lane from the side of Team Unknown.
Well, it is a good trade out, right? You lose a life, you lose 2 to open up the entire base. It is definitely a very, very good trade out for the side of NatusVanguard. But if they are going to continue with plays like that, and trade off rather than pick off, I mean, there is a big difference, right? Where you actually go in for the turret and then your tower, and then you're able to just back off, as compared to when you just go in and then you die after picking up that tower.
Yeah, I agree with you completely there. You prefer, obviously, pick-offs rather than trade-offs, but sometimes a trade has to be made, especially in this in such a big map where you've got to put pressure somewhere to relieve pressure elsewhere, but that could just be a means to an end. And we'll have to see how NatusVanguard decide to play the rest of this, because this Abyssal Dragon will most likely, I would say it's game breaking, but whoever wins the fight around it could be.
Yep, definitely. Sorry, I muted myself and I didn't realize. So,
well, it's all good. We're here in pause, but it is very suspenseful. We've just seen, I believe, the Zephyrus may have jumped the wall there into the Dragon Pit, or the Xennial, and you could see the positioning coming out from the rest of Team Unknown, who are just surrounded here. They surely are going to spot this one out. They know it's Clash P on the side of it, but it looks like we're going to have to wait just a second longer. So I'll hold my breath. I'll let you add any thoughts in, and then you can be sure we're going to see some messy but extraordinary gameplay breaking up in the next few seconds.
Yep, I mean, this is the calm before the storm. I mean, literally, right? We are at a pause, a stop here. Maybe it's a tactical pause from the side of Red. I mean, okay, so they know
what we done. We jumped into the Abyssal Dragon Pit. How do we get out?
All right, let's think on this over a pause. But anyways, we are seeing that of Zephyrus in that top lane, and then you have Crash actually moving down into this mid lane. So if Crashing do come through, they will actually catch out Crash while he's passing through. If not, then Crash will spot them out and then inform the side of NatusVanguard. NatusVanguard backs off. So it is just down to how they are going to execute this Abyssal Dragon, and I'm quite excited, to be quite honest, to be completely honest.
Well,
what will happen?
Let's go right on into it. The team's a bit of a standstill here. Lumber, actually the one to jump on in, doesn't need to do so, is tanking up so much damage for the team, but it's still going to go over to the side of NatusVanguard in terms of the Abyssal Dragon pickup. But look at that! The damage of Praetor over the wall to catch out Clash P could turn this fight all around for them. Meanwhile, Zephyrus might be AFK up there in the top side, and things are falling apart for NatusVanguard. Decided Team Unknown. That was a very risky play to put Lumber in, tank up all the damage. But as you mentioned, also resetting all those cooldowns, or putting all those abilities on cooldown from the side of Nas, and absorbing all that damage allowed the rest of Team Unknown to get on through. But it was a shame in terms of the positioning, first of all, of that Zephyrus, and then the fact of the fact that NatusVanguard were the ones to put themselves in that situation, whereas they could have possibly paused prior to jumping on into the Dragon Pit.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we kind of okay. So an update per se that Zephyrus is in AFK. That's why we are going through with this pause. But it's a good time, right? Because a big team fight just happened. Violet still got the Abyssal Dragon, but they gave away 2 kills over to the side of Unknown. And Unknown can easily just work with these 2 kills, push more towers down. Take, for example, that mid-tier turret. The mid-tier turret, because now we are seeing that the base of Team Unknown is exposed. It's fully exposed, or rather the mid side is fully exposed. So if NatusVanguard do not take care of the mid lane at all, or rather the side of Team Unknown do not take care of the mid lane at all, what will happen then is that NatusVanguard will be able to just push through into the game. Whereas if they are able to...
Oh no, are they really going to... Okay, Team Unknown going for the win. Merciless do not want to allow Zephyrus that free pause. They're going to continue pushing on him and get the mid tower. And they need to be careful here. NatusVanguard do have their respawns now coming out of base. And I think are going to be, as you said, they didn't lose out completely. They didn't lose the Abyssal Dragon, but they very much lost that fight. And in consequence has put them a step back away from that victory. And you can see Xennial getting bursted down in the front line, no backup from the rest of the team to go through, and you just talked about this Maganga not really having such an impact in the game, and I would agree, so that I can't see it myself, and it is a bit of a shame where NatusVanguard, once again, it seems like the usual situation. We see them have such a great early game, but the late game is really where it falls apart. Of course, this time it can be a bit more attributed to that of the AFK coming through on the Zephyrus, but we'll have to see how they play around it. Anyway, they go in with the Metamorphosis. There's going to be Zephyrus all the way in onto the backline, but so much damage getting soaked up onto the front line, I should say. That's Crash. Meanwhile, holding off the rest of Team Unknown, they are able to get one pick for themselves, trying to push on through Zephyrus. Can't find the Joker as he's able to roll back from that, and the Lindis as well, keeping that distance, but does get caught out. And NatusVanguard are doing such a systematical push one by one and breaking down Team Unknown. It's only the Praetor left standing, and they only lost one man for this, and they're going to continue pushing on through for the win. That Zenial was actually able to rejoin the team because of the ultimate, and they get the game no matter what. They just pull on through, and NatusVanguard proving me wrong that they weren't going to fall apart. They got in when it was clutch.
That game. You know, I had thought that Unknown would have made a comeback. I mean, just look at this, right? So Unknown is the one with the pressure, with the poke, and then out of nowhere comes a Metamorphosis because of Praetor's A. And then you see Zephyrus jump into the middle, tries to delete one. Shashank Jake is already down, not up at all yet. So this is a 4v5 that we are witnessing. Clash P very low. Maganga is also there. It's just being there. I'm not sure for what, but he's just there. And then you have Ash just in the front line, putting so much work. Lumber with the bad move goes in. And then you see Ash goes in once again, pick up someone, and the next target will be that of Joker. Arpan, very good aid, deleting or rather slowing everyone down. But it is not enough. Shashank Jake is still at full health. With that tank there, they just easily push the core down, and there was nothing whatsoever that Arpan on that Praetor could do. So that push was an interesting one, firstly, and it is spectacular indeed.
Well, you've got to give it to what the side of NatusVanguard did right, and what that of Team Unknown did wrong. Now, what NatusVanguard did right, they practically ignored the tanks once they took down the Fame. They knew, okay, now we're not going to get charged back at least. Now we can dive onto the enemy team safely, and they don't have so much CC to push us off. Of course, I mentioned how the Joker was able to keep his distance for a while, but the Lindis was the one to get caught out instead. And because of that, they just went on through to lean them one by one with the man advantage, even after being 4 versus 5. And it's just such a great play coming out from Natus. But when you look at what Team Unknown did wrong, I think is a lot in terms of positioning after that. There wasn't too much they could do, but if the Praetor was running back through the mid lane, he could have at least put down some return damage when a few of them were low right before the Zenial joined in, I believe, and healed them up. Could have been able to land some of that damage. He's trying to do so over from the jungle side and over the walls there, but it is just too far away, and he wasn't able to connect with that, and instead was the last one left standing, and was a single Praetor going to do against a full late game team comp of Natus, especially when there's OP Maganga there. Okay, no trash talk on the Maganga, but at least it didn't fail. It came through in the end, but I think you really had to give it through to, it wasn't so much the comp in some sense. The comp, they could have obviously had a better pick for the mid lane, but they went and they played it so well. Is that positioning and that engagement, especially in that last fight, off the back of the Metamorphosis from the Crash?
Well, if you don't ask me, I think what the side of NatusVanguard, the only reason why they'll pick out the Maganga, right? I mean, I'm not trash talking this Maganga, but it is a very peculiar pick, firstly. And secondly, I think it is just for that healing, right? I mean, you have Zenial, but then Zenial's healing is not consistent. Whereas you have Maganga's heal, Fortunate Gift. Its cooldown, it's at like 5 seconds, or I think it's like 3 seconds or 5 seconds. So it's very low cooldown, and you get, you know, a comfortable amount of healing at least. So even if Maganga cannot put down the damage, at least he can help the team sustain, right? There is no other heroes in AoV that actually has that kind of healing other than Maganga. So maybe that is the reason why they decide to actually go for that Maganga pickup. Overall, a very good match coming through from the side of NatusVanguard. They had some missteps here and there, like being too greedy, being just overextended. But even then, they managed to pull through at the end. And that metamorphosis that started the team fight was a very good one. And I must say, it is just Team Unknown's fault for overstaying their welcome at the mid-tier turret.
Well, I don't blame them. Team Unknown is a 5 versus 4 situation. You would imagine that you would have the upper hand, but they just got caught out, picked apart, and it seemed like NatusVanguard were the ones to at least come through when it mattered at the very end. And coming back from the AFK, I think, was very impressive as well. So big ups to them for getting the third place match. But next up, we will have the grand finals, best of 5 between ExDee and the side of MeetYourMakers. So stay tuned for that. A bit of a fight down in the mid. Murad taking a lot of damage, but dealing out as much as he can, and he will trade out for the Praetor. I think Flash P picked that one up once of him, so we'll see what happens, whether he's able to escape. We do have the Praetor coming in, the AoE damage poke coming through. He's going to try trade out, but instead there's going to be the return ultimate coming through by Big Paws on that crash, able to open up a window for his team to pick up those 2 kills. Now Flash P just has to escape back to the safe, even back off themselves.
Yep.
It's going to be Shine with the charge in, and it opens up for some big damage coming through Praetor, and that's going to be the crash going down, and soon to be that of Astrid if she isn't careful, getting caught up in the slow. Oh, you can see both teams there rotating down to this bot tower, and it looks like MeetYourMakers going to go all in. They get it. Whether they back out is the question, but they see they have the damage onto Big Paws. They're going to take him out before he even can use the ultimate, and this is going to be a fight for MeetYourMakers from here on out. Clash B trying to dash away. They do get out of there, and that might be all they get. Meanwhile, Praetor on the backline was being attacked by that Astrid, does get to the safety of his team, but Murad gonna jump in onto Shiny, and that of the Zennial takes notice, but Zennial going to use the ultimate to escape from that fight. However, there's gonna be the poke damage coming through by the Praetor onto Clash P. Meanwhile, Joker gets that of the Slims, and they're going all in. MeetYourMakers taking them down one by one. Big Paws, the next target here. And Astrid getting deleted the second they jump in. The best shape he can be, highest level on his team. He's just going to go right on into the enemy jungle, and they're going to engage this fight, taking out the Murad, who's caught out on his own. Meanwhile, Clash P on the backline just can't do anything against this enemy team because they cannot get back to the enemy backlines where they need to put the damage down, and Slims soon to fall under his own turret.
So NatusVanguard, if they play that team comp right, they have a chance to just snowball really, really hard.
Ooh, but the Slim's going to miss the stun, pushing out the kill. We'll have to see that indeed. And I believe that comes down to when they're together as a team, but right now they are not. They are getting caught out, jumped on. There's going to be Crash trying to push the enemy back, but he's the last one standing. And Zephys have rotated down. Slim's not quite able to join up as he is being held off by the Killgraph, but it won't matter. Zephys is enough to take down the Lindis with the ultimate and around as Lumber makes the rotation down, and they're just leaving it up to that of the Killgraph to solo with this, so he will be up to secure it for the team. And now NatusVanguard have a choice whether they want to go in for the engage. There's going to be the stun over the wall by Slims, but they get the turnaround. There's man more not used, actually used onto Clash P, is able to stun them up. 2 fights going on at once. The bot side will get that of the kill onto, I believe, the Zephys, so a big target, followed by the Slim. Zennial joining in on the fight, able to turn this one around possibly, but trade-offs going down everywhere. It will be that of the Zennial to fall in place, and it's going to be Belinda's getting caught out on her own. Is there next to the Killgraph, to the Crash, but it's about what it can do. Clash P with the trade out, with the double kill, is going to be able to escape from that to the bot lane, and now Malak is going to get taken out, so not want to get caught up in that, but here's going to be the rest of NatusVanguard on the sideline. Views coming in on the backline, but with the ultimate takes out one member and is actually going to continue on through to the rest of his team, trying to turn this fight around for Natus, and they might be able to do just that. He's in the middle, but Lumber gets taken down, the tank for them, alongside Malik, who's going down next. Lindis just doing so much work for the tower as well as the mid lane, and there's going to be the re-engagement coming through from the side of Natus with the ultimate from the Malik, but there's going to be Metamorphosis push back the enemy team, ultimate go through, and they pick up the kill onto Slims, but they do trade out. However, MeetYourMakers looking like they should be able to win this fight, could go through for the game, pushing Clash P back to the base. Actually, Vidpors with very low health, catching up the Malik. Meanwhile, they still have 3 members up of their own. They're going to go for the core, and game number 2 going over to MeetYourMakers. And take this one for themselves, and they collect. There's going to be the engage coming through from Team Unknown. However, Superman going low doesn't really have anything to fight with, is taken down for the first blood, and there's going to be Team Unknown trying to get a return kill. They catch out the Joker. Dexter going to be the next one to fall, as well as Blastoid getting taken down on that backline, and Team Unknown actually able to win out in terms of kills, only losing 1. It didn't really bode too well for them, but they're going to dive in onto this bomb lane tower, and they take down Cox, and they're going to take the tower, roaming the map and helping elsewhere.
Cool.
Gonna take the top tower, but he goes low in return. It looks like Superman probably just gonna back out this one, let the Yorn get taken down. He should be able to find the safety of this tower. So it's a tower for that out. The question is if they can steal. There's going to be a jump over the wall. Abyssal still low. There's going to be the Metamorphosis, the team going to come on through, but it still goes over to the side of ExDee Gaming, and there's going to be Kaz picking up a kill on the Feint. You can just see him over that wall with great positioning, not really being targeted himself. Over meanwhile, and instead there's going to be the Yorn going down. Kaz, about this positioning though, not too sure. He is going to get punished for it. L'Oreal still up, and this could be the turnaround coming through as Superman jumping onto the backline there, but there's going to be the shield coming that we actually first talked about, and they are more than likely going to get Murad going in once again with the ultimate. He's a clean up there for the objective, but it means he's not using it for damage in team fights, and we'll have to see how this plays out. Alice with the shield for her team. They should be able to back safely to the tower, but the tower no longer existing. Could be opportunity for Team Unknown, but you can see Zenial with a rotation down, very easily able to turn this team fight around. There's going to be the double kill for Kaz, possibly the triple, and they are going to go on through, and he's trying to chase down, go for the top high ground tower. Why not? But they instead decide to focus on this core. There's going to be the defense coming through from Team Unknown. Can they do something about it? Kaz is going to take down the L'Oreal. There's Alice going super low. The defense from the side of ExDee Gaming is gone, and this could be Team Unknown with the pushback, but all the meanwhile, Murad took down that top tower solo. It's going to find himself in a 1v1 with the Crash. Whether he can win it out, gets caught out in the Metamorphosis, but the rest of ExDee have moved on to the core. It's only Superman and the Crash up, but Yorn just coming back out of base. Pain on the core, where it used to be. Dexter going to be the one to dive on in, trying to finish off the Crystal, and they just need to do their best to push him back with the Metamorphosis, but it's one hit off the core, is one hit, and they're going for the fight. There's
for sure, Superman actually, Zaniel actually brings much more sustain, and Team, I'll just hold my point.
On to that point, as there's going to be the engagement. Metamorphosis onto Kaz, but not sure if that's the right target. Is Superman getting into the backline there? That's actually going to be the Zenial jumping on through, trying to save his team, and Yorn is going to get a kill in return. Natalia going very low alongside that, but Alice, everyone on ExDee is so low, hugging that turret right now, but L'Oreal is caught out as the last one left from the side of Team Unknown. Will probably go down to the Zenial, and look at that rotation coming through from Servius to catch out Team Unknown. They have to hold on to this one if they want to win, if they want. Hello and welcome back to the TES Arena Valor League. My name is iRequestedIll, and once again being joined by
the awesome, the one, the only Luxure.
Oh, well, that is exactly who is joining me to bring you guys the grand final matchup. We've gone here out of, I believe, 34 teams or 32 teams, and we're here with the top 4 teams. And to get to this point, we do have ExDee Gaming going up against that of MeetYourMakers. And would you like to give a quick rundown, just to remind the viewers once again, the matches they played yesterday in the semifinals?
Yep, so the side of MeetYourMakers, they went up against NatusVanguard yesterday. It wasn't a very clean game, to say the least, but at least they went through the game and they won that 2-0. As for ExDee Gaming, they went up against Team Unknown, won that relatively clean, and ExDee Gaming coming through into the finals. So quick rundown of the roster. For the side of ExDee Gaming, we have the Observer, Blastoise, Offlaner, Cerberus, Mage, Dexter, Marksman, Kaz, Jungler, Pain, Shiny, Observer, Shika, Offlaner, Shashwat, Mage, Forsaken, Marksman, Perfection, Jungler, Chipmunk, and Iron Boss as sub.
Yeah, and we won't keep you waiting any longer. We are here going through into the first draft of our best of 5 between ExDee Gaming and that of MeetYourMakers for this grand final. And we see already half of it has been completed with the Praetor ban, Superman ban, and very mad pickups. But surprisingly, we see Dexter on that browse, or perhaps not surprisingly, as it is ExDee on your left side, and we've got MeetYourMakers on the right. And ExDee are the ones to kind of bring these, not per se off-man picks, but they're definitely not what we see every match all the time. But you do see it filled out with the lineup of the Joker, Zephyrs, Raz, as mentioned, Lubu, and Alice. For the side of MeetYourMakers, we have the Zenio, L'Oreal, that of the Lumber, and I didn't quite catch the last few picks, but maybe my analyst / co-host Luxuria can fill you guys in on that.
Right, so for the side of MeetYourMakers, we are seeing Zenio, L'Oreal, Lumber, Kilgroth, and Violet. So, interesting fact that we actually heard from the producer, the production, before the game actually started, is that Love Pain, our favorite masochist, used to be part of MeetYourMakers, right? So it will be an interesting matchup because MeetYourMakers would know how Love Pain plays, and then of course Love Pain, being the jungler of the team, would know how MeetYourMakers would play. So this will give them, quote unquote, a slight advantage, although not too much. I'm interested to see how this will play out between both of these teams, because I mean, I know ExDee Gaming, right? They are basically cherry picked from the best teams in India to form ExDee to basically rule the whole of India.
Yeah, well, it looks like that's been the case so far for the TES Arena Valor League, and it's just been ExDee have been so on top of their game after game, and they've been this dominant force that have yet to really find any team to reckon with them. And I think that if it's going to be any team, MeetYourMakers have obviously made it here through to the grand final. But besides that, MeetYourMakers, they have this playstyle that if they're allowed to get through to the mid and late game, are very consistent in their positioning in team fights and their rotation. So it's really going to be a top tier game we're going to see coming up here. And with that draft, I'm not really surprised either. We have very good drafts coming out from both teams, as well as that Alice being key for ExDee, and for MeetYourMakers, they've got the picks such as the Violet, but we've seen before this Violet versus Joker matchup can go very much either way. Is just in our previous matches we had just before the third place match being that the side of NatusVanguard were able to play it to great success, especially Clash P on that Violet. So we'll see how it plays out here, because still a great ADC, but so is the Joker. I would say the Joker always prioritized over that, and Violet having to be the backup pick.
Well, I mean, Violet has got burst, but Joker, you know, you have got really good mobility as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, hold on to that for a second as we jump into the first game of this grand finals between ExDee and MeetYourMakers. So it looks like MeetYourMakers on the bot side might be looking for a possible invade, and they are just going to do that with the Kilgroth, the Zenio, and I would imagine the Violet alongside them, but they don't find anything out of it, and instead are going to have to back out, spread out to the usual rotation, and probably go through and clear their own jungle. So it's interesting to see also in the same page that ExDee did not go through for any aggressive plays. But I'll hand it back to your fort as we are here in the early game. of that between, we were talking the draft, especially of what we see in the bot lane here, the Joker versus Violet matchup.
Yep, so Joker, I think in his kit itself, he's got very good mobility, he's got good general DPS, whereas for Violet, there's always that one shot after the roll that hurts a lot, and a lot of teams would utilize that particular one shot, but then when in extended team fight, obviously the Joker will come out on top in general. After all, you know, and also one more thing that I'm actually quite surprised of seeing was that MeetYourMakers actually allowed Zephys through into the phases of draft. I mean, they prioritized up Zenio and L'Oreal and allowed Zephys to go through as second pick for the side of ExDee Gaming. So this is one interesting thing that we might have to note as well. I mean, we saw the strengths of Zephys, and there's a reason why he's rarely led through draft.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the bans, we sometimes even see Zephys up there in the bans. But if that's the case, then obviously whoever's left through is left through. So, I mean, we see those bans. I'd say a 100% ban rate, close to, would be that of Superman. We actually saw him in the semifinals for a few matches yesterday. I think ExDee even led through to the team they were playing against. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. ExDee going against
yesterday's game.
Yesterday.
ExDee going up against Unknown.
Yeah, Unknown. So in those games, they did let the Superman through. But here we are with ExDee taking the first Abyssal Dragon for themselves. And so it's not a pick they're too worried about laying through. And in that draft, I believe they didn't even ban out the Superman. It was the side of MeetYourMakers to pick up that ban.
I think for the side of ExDee's, what their draft is like in general, it's that they will target ban for priority rather than actually banning out meta heroes or the heroes that they do not want to face whatsoever, and thus they actually ban out the Praetor, because Praetor just does so well against the Ras in that of the mid lane because of how fast Praetor can clear, whereas Ras, even you can see now with against a L'Oreal. Okay, so the fight kind of just dismissed itself. So even up against a L'Oreal, a Praetor, even up against a L'Oreal, a Ras struggles to clear the lane. So very good ban coming through from the side of ExDee Gaming. They do not go with the meta, they go with what can endanger the team comp that they would like to play. And Cerberus, of course, on Lubu. Very, very good in that top lane. You have in our tank, you have a lot of sustain. As we saw beforehand, that Lubu can actually stay in a team fight.
Well, there's going to be the engagement from the Zephys. They pick up the first blood for themselves onto the Killgraph. They're going to back off to the safety of their Raz, who's holding that mid lane. Russian actually pushes back the L'Oreal, but no further engagement coming through from ExDee. They're happy with that pick off onto the Killgraph, and it opens up a decent window for them to now roam down to the bot side. And this is what I was so interested in seeing between ExDee and how MeetYourMakers, how these two teams play out against each other. You see Joker jumping in with Can Laughter, does a fair amount of burst damage, and Pain will be the one to pick up the kill as the Zephys taking down the Violet in the bot, and that is also in tune with now opening up the Abyssal Dragon to themselves. And this is just ExDee. It's another day in the office for them. It's the same as usual. They really are this team that roams so early on, and because of that roam pressure, because of the damage output they have, as well as the just mana advantage, and that's something else we have to mention, that damage output. Because the team comp they like to go for, Blastoise, you almost always see him on the Alice if possible, because they know the Alice pickup with sometimes, say, a Zenio top lane is enough for them to then make up enough defense for the team. However, in this case, they are relying more just on the Alice, and Lubu is going to have to simply frontline later on when he joins in the fight. So they're missing a slight amount of that global pressure, but they still pull off the same strats as we see here. There's going to be the Zephys weighing over the wall, then jumps over, puts down the damage alongside the team, and there's nowhere for the Killgraph and that of the Zenio to run. and they just clean up that way. And I was wondering whether MeetYourMakers, we've seen them play such a passive early game and then really come through into the mid. But if they're going to continue to play so passive against a team like ExDee, I think they're just going to get torn apart early. ExDee more than likely going to get everything they want and push on through for the late game in very much snowball fashion.
Yep, and this was one thing that I was worried about even before the stream started. So we had a tiny discussion, but Shashwat.
It looks like he will be safe. There's the Kilgroth as well as the Zennial coming on through to save him, but that is a I was going to say 3v4 situation. There's the rest of the side of MeetYourMakers coming on through, but the Joker, Kaz on that Joker once again, roaming up bot lane, will be able to put down the damage, and they might even pick off Shashwa or Amboss on that Kilgroth. The heals coming on through for the side of ExDee just to make sure they sustain in this fight. And it looks like more than less a bit of poke damage going on everywhere, but look at this. MeetYourMakers can't even step into their own jungle.
Yep, I mean, Blastoise is doing a very good job as, you know, in that observer role, just roaming through the whole map, providing vision for MeetYourMakers, for the side of ExDee Gaming. I'm so sorry, but even then, you know, with that, they can't get any kills, but then because they pressured enough in that mid lane, they're able to successfully go for the Abyssal Dragon once again, furthering their lead. And this is the discussion. We had this discussion even before stream start. Right, and the discussion was that MeetYourMakers, they have their own playstyle. They are lax in that early game, but they push on into that the mid-late game. Issue with that is that the real counter for that kind of playstyle is basically just to pressure that early game. Once you have that snowball lead, it's really difficult anyways, even no matter how well your late game is, for you to even come back. So there's one thing that MeetYourMakers have to play like yesterday's stream I did mention as we were closing out, that MeetYourMakers have to understand how ExDee plays in order for them to actually play up against ExDee Gaming.
Yep, and we will see that Baraz in the mid lane taking down the L'Oreal, followed through by the mid tower, and they're going to pressure the tier 2, and you see Love Pain doing a bit more just work, then continuing to regroup with the team. And look at this, even though Zennial's pushed it so far up, it's just going to be one Zephyr's dash in to take it down. I would imagine Zennial would want to ult out of here, but it is not available at the moment. There's no escape for him. And ExDee, they're roaming, their pressure all around the map. They just have so much control. And I think this is what we really need to point out on. Not just the fact of the individual skills of these players, but how well they work out as a team and how well they understand what the necessary win conditions are. But look at that. The L'Oreal is going to find a return kill onto Baraz, possibly the only one they'll get, because I would imagine ExDee going to be a bit more cautious. We did see ExDee in a few situations where we respect them as a team that knows their boundaries, and we have seen them also be a bit too how to say, well, we'll hold on to that as Cerberus. I don't think he's going to be able to win that fight out, but he will be able to stay alive. So you've got to give it up to the Kilgroth there for doing a great job of split pushing for the team. But it will be the 4th Abyssal Dragon for the game going over to ExDee Games. But look at this, MeetYourMakers, they're really showing up here. They've decided to go for the risky play of the Darkslayer, but this is something they need to stay relevant in this game. And if they can make this work, I am going to be more than impressed. They are going to, it looks like they should be able to get without a steal, but Raz is positioning himself, and that is going to be the Darkslayer buff. And now, as long as Zennial can back out this, MeetYourMakers in the Grand Finals game number 1, they are not going to go down without a fight.
Well, they are not going to go down without a fight, indeed. I mean, we saw a very risky play, but I think it's merely calculated risk on the side of MeetYourMakers. Very good wrestling strategy coming through from them. They knew they couldn't win in team fight, so what do? They set Iron Boss up into the top lane to try to rat for them.
Hold on here, it looks like that Iron Boss could get caught out alongside Shiny X, but there's going to be the Zephyr's jumping into the rest of the team fight. However, it's getting all turned on their heads. MeetYourMakers had the buff, and they did not make use of it. This is... it was so impressive for a second to see them make such a play to take away the Dark Slayer buff. I guess at the end of the day, you could say, well, at least ExDee Gaming didn't get it. But MeetYourMakers, I was really looking for a possibility of a comeback there and a turnaround. But right now, ExDee are going to go back to doing what they do, pressuring each part of the map. You can see currently bottom lane being pressured alongside top lane. That's going to open up the mid lane for them, and they should be able to take that tier 2 tower and then rotate back to that of the Abyssal Dragon.
Well, they are not prioritizing Alice or Blastoise in that mid lane at all, and we will be heading into a small tactical pause coming out from the side of MeetYourMakers. But considering how it's been playing out, right? Just looking at the gold difference alone, we have ExDee Gaming at 27,000 gold, and then you have MeetYourMakers at 23.2 thousand. So the gold difference, it's a mere 4.3.8 thousand. So it's not much of a difference. MeetYourMakers, as long as they consider, going in and going for those calculated risky plays, I think they still have a chance. They still stand a chance. I mean, the producers and yourself off stream have mentioned it like thrice that MeetYourMakers, if any teams were to go up against ExDee Gaming, and one of the teams that can actually take 1 or 2 games away from ExDee Gaming would be MeetYourMakers. So I have faith in them as well. But looking and considering how they are playing so far, their passive early game play style is just not working just yet.
Yeah, well, I think that's why something that surprised me so much was the Dark Slayer take, and for that top tower push. I wasn't expecting it. ExDee obviously weren't expecting it. As you can see, their top lane is pushed up to their high ground tower, but ExDee starting to recompose themselves. They took the mid tower. As I mentioned, that was completely their strat. Pressure the bot top, open mid, and it was perfectly timed to just rotate down to the 5th Abyssal Dragon. And now it's just a question of what MeetYourMakers can do to come back from this, because the gold lead, the level lead is all going in favor of ExDee, and it really will take... I'm not even sure when looking at that team comp what kind of team fight they could have to make a comeback here. You could look with the Lumber ult as a possible engagement, or I think the best situation for them, honestly, is happening to find a mistake in ExDee's rotations where they can catch a single member out. But that is so it's so hard to find right now with how they're positioning themselves.
Well, like, I have to agree with you. They cannot at all at this point in time go in for a full team fight.
Well, there's the mid lane, and it looks like Lori will go down. Zenial not quick enough on the ultimate to go in for the defensive save, and I don't even think it would have been enough because of just the output damage coming through from ExDee. Cerberus needs to fight this one to stay alive, and he is going to get the heal from the rest of his team, the shielding from Alice as well, and they're able to get out of that, as well as I believe they might have taken down the Zenial just then, and they're going to go through onto the mid high ground tower. There's going to be the Lumber ultimate, but no follow up on the back of that, and that is quite worrying for the side of MeetYourMakers when they have to start using that ultimate as a defensive move rather than offensive, and it allowed for ExDee Gaming over meanwhile to then push the side towers. And yeah, I'm quite worried indeed for MeetYourMakers at this point.
Yep, I mean 34.2k gold to 29. The goal difference, it's still it's not getting any larger for the side of ExDee Gaming, but we are seeing how Joker is playing. So in yesterday's game, we saw ExDee actually become a yawn for themselves, and then what they basically played as was to bug the other lane, so much so that, you know, Yawn could just simply split push. And this exact same strategy is being applied here, right? So they're allowing Joker to just stay by the side lane, push, do not come at all while they pressure other lanes. So other lanes have to be addressed while Joker can simply just push. So very, very good strategy coming out from ExDee Gaming. I mean, even just look at the top lane, the top side of the map, we are seeing Lubu just being there, staying in the brush, being very patient. Only Zenial is addressing that threat there, but Lubu can easily take down Zenial if he really wants to. Even now, Joker rotating upwards into that high ground tower. So the high ground tower might fall soon, and even then we are seeing so much pressure coming through from the side of ExDee Gaming.
Yep, and I'm Boss Solo on that Kilgrove, just taking so much damage, so much poke coming out from the side of ExDee, and they're just waiting for their minion waves at this point to do anything. They technically could rotate back and take a quick Abyssal Dragon if they want to, but they want to keep up the pressure. And you can see it's just Cerberus drawing two people of the MeetYourMakers up to that top lane, meanwhile opening up the rest of the lanes. And MeetYourMakers so far doing a decent job of clearing out those minions before ExDee have too much of a chance to get anything, but this mid-wave minion push could be the chance for them. Kaz getting some good damage through there, and yeah, they decide that they're not getting anywhere. ExDee going to back off instead, whether they decide to set up an ambush or just go for that of the Abyssal Dragon. I mean, this is the thing, they haven't actually gone into the Abyssal Dragon, and why I was considering the ambush. They are making MeetYourMakers think they are going for the Abyssal Dragon. The only problem is MeetYourMakers, they're just so far behind, they don't even want to try and contest that.
Ooh, Zenio actually giving up that top lane.
Oh, but look at this. Zenio is going to instead jump into a bad situation, trying to protect the lumber, and is going to fall in place. Raz picking up that kill for himself, but you can see the L'Oreal trying to dish out some damage. Lubu on the backline going to stop anyone from escaping, and then there's going to be the cleanup coming through.
Ooh.
And Zephys diving in deep to pick up some kills alongside that of a Raz. And this actually goes back to what I was what you were mentioning about Kaz on the Joker being allowed to do what he wants, being allowed to slowly push a lane. And you just see the rotation always being this Alice alongside the Zephys and that of the Raz. It's the Observer with the Marksman alongside the Jungler. They do this rotation, they have enough damage, not the Marksman, my bad, the mid lane. And they have enough damage, but it could just be the end of the game. We see the respawn only coming up for Zenio, and they're going to go through and end it, so I'll hold on to my point just there, but they don't have the minion wave instead. Alice is going to be the one to fall, when we've seen similar situations before, where ExDee try and end out the game too early. It is a risk, but it's definitely not much lost for them, because they had backed out in time to make sure that they don't lose too much. They could even possibly take an Abyssal behind that of the Darkslayer, but Darkslayer obviously being the priority, they might look for a steal if possible.
Okay, wait, so Slayer is getting
there's
taken.
There's gonna be a lot of pain! Going over the wall, gets the Darkslayer steal, is not going to find the jump back over, but stops MeetYourMakers from any chance at a comeback. Meanwhile, Lubu trying to push in that core. There's going to be the ultimate from Zenio to defend the base, but the Zephys pickup, the Zephys steal on that Darkslayer. ExDee coming in clutch.
Well, Zephys definitely using the death from above to the greatest extent it can. And now, while they were taking the Darkslayer, Zephys provided excellent vision for his team. Lubu was allowed to push into the core, via the bottom lane high ground tower, and immediately exposing the entire base of MeetYourMakers. Obviously, top high ground tower still stands, but even then, the side of ExDee Gaming can easily just push in from the bottom or the mid. And now with two super minion waves coming through, the side of MeetYourMakers won't really have a chance to even breathe, but just to clear the wave out over and over again, just rinse and repeat to clear the lane. They cannot quite leave their base at this point, because if they do leave the base, what happened then is that ExDee would just march in from inside, or they don't even need the entirety of ExDee. They just need one, Lubu, or even Dexter, or even just Joker in itself to just march into the lane, and it's pretty much the game. But for now, they really need to look for an opening. They cannot afford any form of mistakes right now, especially from the side of ExDee. They have got full items at this point, and you know, they might just want to go in for a team fight.
They are slowing down the Zenio. Zenio going to jump back. And I think the thing is, hey, you're right about that. ExDee either decide to go in for a team fight, or they bait out MeetYourMakers, but deciding to be a bit impatient here, realizing MeetYourMakers aren't really the type of team to be so aggressive instead of playing the more passive play style like usual. ExDee going to start to go on the front lines there. You see Zephys just diving into almost the whole team of MeetYourMakers, but no one able to do anything. Raz went up to the top lane to push in this tower, and now could be the ghost time for ExDee that forced back a few of the members of MeetYourMakers to the base to heal up, but there's going to be the engagement, and they go on through, getting Iron Boss very low on that kill graph, and Joker going to pick up the kill onto Valor, but Cerberus will fall. Valubu, the front line for their team has gone down, so they're going to just have to rely on positioning and damage, and just not allowing that MeetYourMakers to get to their backline. But what can they do? The Xennial isn't actually able to jump in, and neither is obviously the kill graph, who had to go back, and now they're a bit low on resources as well as opportunities to make a push, but same goes for ExDee. They are instead going to back out of this one. Now, while we jump into this pause, I would like to mention the fact of like ExDee playstyle against MeetYourMakers. We talked about before, the passiveness coming out from MeetYourMakers is almost playing in favor of them. ExDee, a team that would love MeetYourMakers to just go strolling out their base. As you mentioned, they can either then push in from the sides, or they can set up an ambush, and we've seen it before. But MeetYourMakers, they're testing ExDee's wits here, and they're testing their patience.
Yep, I mean, but ExDee, I must say, they are being very, very patient. I mean, just look at how they were playing then. I thought they would just break at this game, and maybe this is MeetYourMakers' strategy coming into this series at all, right? Stretch out the first game for as long as possible, stretch out the second game for as long as possible, and then reverse sweep that of ExDee Gaming. That might be a possibility, but now I don't think so. The whole team...
They're done playing around. You can see the Zephyrs pushing the bot lane solo. The rest of ExDee all up here in the top side. And for the side of MeetYourMakers, it is actually a viable strat in a lot of ways. The longer the game goes on, the less important that gold difference becomes. Everyone will be able to then catch up on builds, but in a sense, not quite if they're not actually able to get any gold other than the minions pushing into their base. So we'll have to see what ExDee... You can rarely see ExDee now they've decided, okay, we're putting so much resources up into this top high ground tower, because if we don't, they're going to be able to clear all the lanes at once, and we're not actually able to do a thing. I think another play we could see is that of ExDee waiting for the next Dark Slayer and then going all in without care.
Yep, they might just want to just wait for the Dark Slayer, but now with one high ground, with one tower left standing, I think they still have a chance for the side of MeetYourMakers to actually change.
Otherwise, they're just going to bait MeetYourMakers and wait for stake Iron Boss. People take out all the damage, gets taken down by the Kaz on that Joker, and now Xennial having to back off there. It looks like the Violet, the next target, will go down, and it's a 3v5 situation. No one on ExDee has taken damage per se, and no one will fall in this fight except for the Alice and that of the Joker. So I was mistaken. Just when you think that they're safe, they're not, but they get right back up, and now we see that they are still in that 5v2 situation, and they are going to dive on in. There's going to be the Zephyrs locking down the L'Oreal, but I'm surprised no one went in to pick up the finish kill. Lumber with a great knock up there. It's up to them to come into clutch and try and pick up the kills necessary. L'Oreal dodging out so much damage from the Ross, actually gets the trade-off. It's going to go through and picks up the Zephyrs before falling, and it's all on Lumber, but no, the minions! The Winions, they get it, and MeetYourMakers can't hold on any longer. Game number 1, finally going over to ExDee Gaming.
Yep, finally, after 22 minutes of struggling, this tug of war is finally come to an end. I mean, ExDee, they definitely did play very, very, very well. Issue with that, it's just down to this. MeetYourMakers played very, very well. Issue with that, it's just down to this last team fight. They were baited to go in for that Alice. So Iron Boss came out thinking that he can easily delete Alice, and then the entire team of ExDee just jumped on him, deleted him. Next target was Violet, and Violet goes down, and then afterwards it's Chipmunk, and there is really nothing much that they can do. Blink was used by Shashwat to be able to stay, alive for a little longer, but even that is not enough whatsoever, because they don't care about that anymore, right? They're not even going in for the team fights anymore. They are just letting the Winions just win the game. I mean, just look at the buff guy just poking down the core. Good game, well played.
GG, well played indeed, but you have to give it to Shashwat on that L'Oreal. It almost came in clutch for triple kill. If they had just stayed alive a little bit longer, might have even been able to hold off, clear that minion wave. And meanwhile, while Lumber was tanking up the damage. But what a game to start it off. What a game to start off the grand finals. And I think that MeetYourMakers, you're right. They did a great job for holding on as long as they did. But at the end, it's just ExDee with the play styles, the way they conflict each other. ExDee always had this advantage. So until we see MeetYourMakers try and go up to that with their own aggressive early game, I think that we will continue to see ExDee with the advantage going on through to these snowball type games. I think the problem there for ExDee was they weren't able to quite finish it out, and when playing against that of a team like MeetYourMakers, they're a team that will hold on for a long time. So both teams really testing each other's patience there. And yeah, I'm just lost for words with that last team fight, because it really showed some hope that MeetYourMakers possibly could have made it back. Of course, the side of ExDee diving in under the core, taking a fair amount of damage themselves, and trying to go for the objective instead of so much as the kill. But it's very impressive gameplay when it comes down to micro plays, and you can see these the top tier players coming out from India right now in terms of.
Yep. So to be honest, MeetYourMakers in the last one, it was really just holding on to their dear life, right? So even if the side of ExDee do make a big mistakes, do make a big mistake, say they dive onto the core haphazardly, ignoring all kinds of damage that's coming through to try to take down a core, that is a big mistake that ExDee would have made. And MeetYourMakers, even then, wouldn't be able to do much with that particular mistake. Firstly, they have two high ground towers down, and with that, very strong minions are pushing into the base. So, you know, even MeetYourMakers, they definitely did try their best to hold out for as long as possible to try to even out the levels, the items, but even then, it's just not working as well. For the side of ExDee Gaming, however, they are not playing like they used to. We saw a game with ExDee Gaming before, and that game ended at 9 minutes flat, or is it a sub 9, or was it sub 8 minutes after the first Dark Slayer, and they immediately ended the game. So this is the ExDee playstyle they were talking about. So going for objectives, going for towers, and then finally ending the game. Whereas for this game itself, they allowed it to drag way too long. They allowed MeetYourMakers to get the items, needed for those heroes. They gave MeetYourMakers a chance to get those levels as well. So thinking about this, maybe the next round for ExDee Gaming and MeetYourMakers, what MeetYourMakers might do is be a little more aggressive. As for the side of ExDee Gaming, maybe do it cleaner.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I agree with you, but I also have some points where I disagree. I feel like you're taking away credit for the fact of MeetYourMakers, that play style. If they were to play aggressive in the late game, that's definitely a mistake. I agree in the fact that they should play more aggressive. However, that should be done in the early game. And the way they played so passive in the late was what allowed them to survive for so long. Yes, they would have been in a horrible situation, no doubt, but it is irreversible when they had lost their two high ground towers and they were down to practically half a high ground tower in the top and that core. But I think that really ExDee, when you say they should have played it more aggressive and should have played it more clean, they just didn't have the opportunities. ExDee are a game that realize that. They know when they have opportunities to take a fight, to take an objective, and they just were struggling to find them in the base. At least they didn't want to make those risky plays, and that's why I mentioned perhaps they're waiting for the Dark Slayer to come up, and then they would go for Dark Slayer, and then they'd be more willing to make the risky plays. I think even more so, you've got to think of the pressure on these players coming into the grand finals here, that ExDee might be playing a bit more passive than we've usually seen them, having a bit more patience and not going as reckless. Although those are the flashy plays, and those are the ones that ExDee usually pulls out for us. And I'm sure the further we get into these, into this best of 5, there will be no shortage of them.
No, well, I mean, I want MeetYourMakers to be aggressive in the early game, not so much of the late game. But as for ExDee Gaming, I want them to actually look for more opportunities in the early game instead of just taking Abyssal Dragon in itself. But that besides the point, because draft is ready, so let's just head on straight into draft.
So draft number 2, we see the Superman ban coming out from MeetYourMakers once again. But in retaliation to that, ExDee going to go for the Zep, this shiny X getting his hands on the Zenio for the side of MeetYourMakers. And in return, the Praetor and Joker. Now you mentioned this Praetor ban that came through earlier from ExDee Gaming, and that just shows how much importance they place on that pick.
Well, I think the only reason Praetor was just banned on the previous game was because of that Ras. But now that they do not want to go for the Ras, instead they are opting for the Praetor. They will have a lot more pressure coming out from the side of ExDee Gaming, because Praetor easily clear lane, easily rotate, and I'm just liking what I'm seeing right now coming out from ExDee. They have Joker, they have Violet. So what this really means is that they have very fast clear firstly, they have Cerberus that can split push, and they have Praetor to hold that mid lane. If not hold, then at least push down that mid lane.
I would love to see MeetYourMakers honestly pick up the Alice, because it is more than likely I will put my money that Blastoise will be picking up Alice to finish off the comp. I mean, it fits in so well with how ExDee Gaming play their team comp, and if I'm wrong, oh my lord, oh, is definitely listening in on me, because they're going to go for the Crash. Not a bad pick either, but they go for the Crash alongside that of the Praetor, the Joker, the Violet, and the Lubu. And the reason I was thinking that go for the Alice was, well, last time they were relying on that of the Alice to be the support, because obviously they didn't get the Zenio pick, and once again they did not have the Zenio pick, so it just seemed like they would. But ExDee, the kind of team to also surprise you with picks. But it's very much meta. I think it still fits into that team comp. They're just not going to have shielding. They're going to rely on the CC and frontline they have. So I think you were right when you said ExDee might even be more aggressive this game, judging by that draft.
Yep, so we saw really aggressive games coming out from ExDee, whether it's a show match, whether it's their climb to be the top 4 teams. And when we see those games, it's usually Blastoise on Crash. Whereas when you see Blastoise on, say, Alice, per se, and what you realize in those games is that ExDee is kind of shaky. I know Blastoise, he's a very, very good Alice, right? Very good, but at the end of it all, Alice, ultimately, Alice is still a backline supporter. You cannot do much plays except for your silence and your stun, but that's about it, right? Whereas for Crash, you can actually be in the thick of fights, lay down the damage that's needed, put down so much health barrier for a team, and on top of that, just control the entire zone of fight, the entire fight zone. So that is why I understand why the Crash is picked up. In fact, I wanted to say that they'll pick up the Crash rather than the Alice. They should pick up the Crash rather than the Alice because of how aggressive their team comp looks. I mean, they have Praetor, Joker, Violet, Lubu, and Crash. So if they have an Alice there, it will basically limit how much of aggression they can actually put out. But this time around, looking over at MeetYourMakers team comp, they have that Zenio, L'Oreal, Malak, Murad, and Kilgroth. It's not all too bad at team comp. But like you mentioned yesterday, Malak is pretty much a hit and miss. You sometimes work, it's sometimes not so much.
Yeah, well, this is why I have you here, Luxuria, to explain those things to myself and the viewers. And I completely agree. When I saw the Crash pick, I was only surprised because I was thinking that, oh yeah, we'll see Alice come on through. But you're right in terms of it makes so much more sense in terms of aggression and the way they need to be playing. Not just the way that they might want to, but needing to, especially into that late game. As we jump on into game number 2 between ExDee Gaming and not MeetYourMakers. Actually, yes, MeetYourMakers. We will see how they decide to play this one. They're not going for the aggressive early in terms of invade, but we will see that of ExDee in the late, they have this opportunity with the Crash ultimate to really initiate some team fights. And I think that they had Crash in the previous game, where the base was practically open for the most part. They would then be able to find the fights they want, and as I said, the pickoffs they need. Ooh, this could be a bit risky coming through from the Murad, going onto the Might Golem in the side of ExDee's jungle, because ExDee actually started on that wolf over there and has baited them in. The Malak getting caught out. Don't think he will be able to escape, gets knocked up, and is going to go down for the first blood. So there is going to be ExDee kicking it off for game number 2.
Yep, I like how the comp is working out for the side of ExDee Gaming. Granted, it is a very overused, overdue comp. So what comp is it I'm talking about? Is basically a Roma comp, a Roma patrol squad with Violet, the ADC as the main point. So Violet, or rather Pain on Violet, will be roaming around the map, roaming around the jungler, clearing everything out, and then after that they'll go into lanes to gank. And the thing that's good about this particular team comp is the amount of burst that you have. As you can tell from the other lanes, Lubu, consistent damage, Joker, consistent damage, not so much of the burst. And what Violet can actually provide to the team is basically this burst, and then the ability to able to just quickly clear out Abyssal Dragon as well, which we can tell it is one of the priorities for the side of ExDee Gaming.
I think a priority for any team that wants to try and get ahead in that game is that Abyssal Dragon. We've talked about why before, but obviously in terms of the gold and level advantage it gives to you, as long as you're not losing too much out for taking it. But right now, ExDee just waiting for a window to do so. So you can see maybe a possible rotation Praetor going down towards that Abyssal Dragon. They might even catch out Shiny X on the Zennial. He should be able to jump over the wall if he gets jumped on, however. And by that, they gave MeetYourMakers a bit of time to actually rotate down themselves into this fight. And there's going to be the Murad jumping onto Love Pain on the Violet. And Praetor instead is the one to take him out. And they're going to follow through as Kaz picks up a kill onto the L'Oreal. And they are just pushing on through. And they're not done quite yet. They're going to pick up the Zennial. And now I'm sure they're more than comfortable to take that other Abyssal Dragon members down from the side of MeetYourMakers. And Malok was actually lost out in a trade to Cerberus by the looks of it, and is going to lose out the top tower as well as the Abyssal Dragon. So ExDee Gaming gained more than they even asked for.
I mean, that is an impressive rotation coming out from the side of ExDee Gaming, especially the one at the top lane. Lupo able to put down pressure onto Malok, forcing him back or forcing him to die. I think, wait, let me just see. Yeah, I think it is to die. And then Malok forced to go back, not quite able to make it back in time, but Iron Boss now in a very dangerous position, might be going down.
Well, we see Shiny X getting caught out by the Metamorphosis, also meant for that of Kilgroth, but Iron Boss is going to back. Now we did see some success from Iron Boss being able to push down lanes with that Kilgroth up in the top lane previously. Well, he wasn't in the top lane, but he did rotate up previous game to help do so. So once again, you've got the Zennial Kilgroth thing working, but they put that pressure in the bot lane for this time, knowing that Malok is probably going to be a bit slower in that sense. And I think that it really is the fact that ExDee, they have such a better comp, and you mentioned it before with the roaming they have. It's something that they always play. They just kind of adjust certain variables. In this case, they have the double ADC comp with that of Pain on that Violet, and it looks like Dexter going in deep, trying to pick up Shashwat on that L'Oreal, but not going to get the kill. And Murad now jumping into a 1v3 situation, realizing he's got to back up from there, is going to go in with the ultimate that gets taken down anyway. And it's that roaming comp. You can't deal with it. You see that there's the Crash for in case they need the Metamorphosis, CC to stun up anyone, and then the high burst from Violet, which we see now as they take out the Kilgroth caught between the Joker and Violet and the Crash. There is nowhere to run. Shashwat, not so sure about this rotation coming down to the bot side tower. They are probably going to just have to let this go over to ExDee, and could have instead put that focus elsewhere. And this is what we've talked about before of teams, whether they have a plan to go against ExDee, a plan of their own, or if they're simply responding to ExDee. Because if you are responding to ExDee, I'm sorry, but you are a second too late to every objective into every fight.
Yep, I mean, this is the ExDee that I want to see. In the previous game, not a bad play, but this is the ExDee that I want to see. It's so very controlled with whatever they do. They know what they want, top lane to bot lane. They have the Roma, they have the damage, they have the tankiness. They are unafraid at all. I mean, just look at Pain.
Yep, it looks like Shiny X will get caught out with the rotation down. A bit of miscommunication by the team if they weren't able to show that. And you can see the Malik going in with the ultimate, and now the side of MeetYourMakers are like, well, Malik went in, we've got to make something happen off the back of this. But do they really? Is this a fight they can win? And no is the answer. Cerberus gets the shutdown onto L'Oreal, chasing down Zenio. I think Zenio should be able to get away no matter what, though, but they do lose another tower. Meanwhile, it's this same strategy you talked about. The 4-man pressure is all they need once they get going, and they leave Kaz to do his own thing on this marksman role, just pushing off in the side lane.
Oh dear, I mean, ExDee at this point, I said it loud and clear in yesterday's stream before ending out that MeetYourMakers going up against ExDee Gaming, like you reiterated, you cannot just go in to expect to know what ExDee will do and then with that try to respond. There is no such thing as that when you're going up against ExDee Gaming. Really, you need to have a plan to go through. Like, okay, minute this, minute that. We're going to do this, and that will happen. But if that's not the case, then you are basically just reacting. And like you mentioned, it's always and consistently a step too late. And Zenio, you tried.
A step too late, right into the danger. Be able to get out there with the ultimate, however, escapes to the safety of his team. And they did manage to... I thought they managed to get a bot tower, but no, it's like they might back out there. There's going to be Cerberus on the Lubu rotating down and forcing them off of that tower, keeping it alive with a sliver of health. And
Pain can
like
really...
Yeah.
I mean, at the point in time, Pain can just roll in to just get that tower.
Yeah,
yeah.
Just like that mid tower is a sliver of health. And so is the Abyssal Dragon as it goes over into the hands of ExDee. That's going to be the 3rd dragon, 4 towers to their name, and a Darkslayer. This is really where we can see some aggression come out from ExDee now that they have the Darkslayer buff. And they're moving on to the high ground tower, at least in the bot lane, in the mid lane as well. So what a better time for them to get this. However, I'm not so sure about that positioning here. Violet is very far off in the back, still farming up, I believe, and is due to Violet wanting to get more into that late game stage. They are already level 13, the highest level they can be, but they want to just make sure that they can push on through for a win. And I think this is something that ExDee previously struggled with once they get through to this late game stage. But Violet also putting the pressure up in that top lane, forcing the Killgraph to rotate there. And meanwhile, they're going to be able to take this bot tower, if not contesting.
Yep, and Violet
is going in. Violet, meanwhile, getting the top tower, and no contest whatsoever from MeetYourMakers. So MeetYourMakers, this passive playstyle really is not going to work out because there is nothing for them to hold on to. They might be able to trade out a kill or two, but that's going to be about it. And we're going to have to see now as the fight breaks out, Murad jumping right into the thick of it alongside the Malik, but there's going to be the ExDee just holding on through. Praetor going very low to the L'Oreal, but not low enough. And there's going to be the next high ground tower going, and soon to follow the mid. They could even jump in on under this one. Violet doesn't even have to. You could see actually putting some damage down out of range, but it looks like they're considering their choices here. They're going to farm up even more, and then either return to this mid lane or just rotate up to get their 4th Abyssal Dragon.
Well, they can either get the 4th Abyssal Dragon or they can simply end the game out right now. I mean, Violet, just look at the amount of burst that she has, right? She don't have to go all that close down, and the amount of poke and burst that this team really have.
One more shot. Violet rolls back in for the final shot, and it was just about timing. And this is just how Violet works in lane as well. If you, that tower, that is your own HP bar going down, and you can imagine that. So now we're going to see here, it's a MeetYourMakers struggling, scrambling around to find some kind of engagement. It's going to have to rely on the Malik ultimate alongside possibly that of the Murad going in, but they need to all go in at once. And now with the minions pushing in onto this core, that is going to be the opportunity for ExDee, but Malik not finding anyone with that. And instead taking a huge amount of damage in return. It's going to have to back off from this fight. There's going to be the Metamorphosis coming through from the... from that of the crash, and the game is over before the fight, and that is going to be ExDee. They're not even spending another second, as you mentioned, looking these fast and quick games, especially after that last 22-minute game. They're going to go through and finish it in under 11 minutes. And that is why the Kilgroth pick came up there. And, not the Kilgroth, the Crash pick for the ultimate engagement. Not even for engagement purposes, but you can see in this last team fight is more so used just to push the enemy away, see, and stun them up so they had a chance to go forward without losing anyone.
Yep, I mean, just looking at this last team fight itself, look at the health barrier that Crash actually provides for the team. Minions marching in, all they had to do was dodge Malek's ultimate, and then after which, all they have to do re-engage, re-go in, and then because Violet's after roll basic attack is one of those that can actually pierce through, and here you see, right, it is just Violet concentrating down on the core, not even interested at all in that team fight. So that was an amazing play coming out from the side of ExDee Gaming, and that is the ExDee Gaming that I want to see. Regardless of whatever comp they go for, whichever team they go up against, because MeetYourMakers, they play passively, they are easy bait for the side of ExDee Gaming.
Yeah, I think that this is the thing we about. As interested after the first game, especially prior to the first game, I was thinking, well, how are MeetYourMakers going to maybe adjust their play style against ExDee? And then it came to this fact that we saw in the first where ExDee didn't have any means of really hard initiation once MeetYourMakers were turtled up in their base, that was the situation where maybe MeetYourMakers could do something, but not unless they play the start of the game so passively as well and hand it over to ExDee, because from there, ExDee are going to do as they please and continue with their roaming strategies like usual, which is it's what they do to then pressure on lanes and win out that early game, opening up objectives, and it's this game of rotation that they play with you. And I think that unless you are a very aggressive team yourself, but obviously has to be calculated, and you are trading out evenly for ExDee, that's the only way I could see you coming out as a possible win against them.
Yep, I mean, ExDee Gaming, to go up against them, I think we've dropped very good tips so far. Because, I mean, we've watched every single game that ExDee played. Right, so we actually do know how ExDee or how a team should go up against ExDee play, right? So basically, you have a game plan in mind, you have a good shot caller in your team, know what to do at what second. It will be tiring for your head and in your mind, but that is what it takes to win ExDee Gaming, right? It's not just a physical struggle in terms of playing the game, but it's also a mental struggle, right? It's a lot of chess playing when you're going up against ExDee because of how well they are moving around the map. They know the map better than we know, like the back of our hands, right? So all you have to do is just look at how ExDee plays, look at those VODs of ExDee when they play, and then from there, try to latch onto those loopholes. Because obviously, ExDee, they are not they're not perfect. They make mistakes here and there after all.
Yeah, well, I mean, all we can do is hope for this side of MeetYourMakers that they come through for something here in the next game, because that will be the possible last in this best of 5. But right before we go into the next game, we will go into a break because we want everyone to regain their hype, get refreshed, and get ready for what could be the final match of this grand final. So stay tuned. We'll see you then. This is something that's going to point on, but Clash P getting jumped on over the wall. Looks like we will have a bit of a fight down in the mid. Murad taking a lot of damage, but dealing out as much as he can, and he will trade out for the Praetor. I think Clash P picked that one up, glimpse of him, so we'll see what happens, whether he's able to escape. We do have the Praetor coming in, the AoE damage poke coming through. He's going to try trade out, but instead there's going to be the return ultimate coming through by Big Paws on that Crash, able to open up a window for his team to pick up those 2 kills. Now Clash P just has to escape back to the safe, even back off themselves.
Yep.
It's going to be Shine with a charge in, and it opens up for some big damage coming through Praetor, and that's going to be the Crash going down, and soon to be that of Astrid if she isn't careful, getting caught up in the slow. You can see both. And it looks like MeetYourMakers is going to go all in. They get it. Whether they back out is the question, but they see they have the damage onto Big Paws. They're going to take him out before This is going to be a fight for MeetYourMakers from here on out. Clash B trying to dash away. They do get out of there, and that might be all they get. Meanwhile, Praetor on the backline was being attacked by that Astrid. Does get to the safety of his team, but Murad gonna jump in onto Shiny, and that of Zenial takes Natus, but Zenial going to use the ultimate to escape from that fight. However, there's gonna be the poke damage coming through by the Praetor onto Clash P. Meanwhile, Joker gets that of the Slims, and they're going all in. MeetYourMakers taking them down one by one. Big pause the next target here, and Astrid getting deleted the second they jump in. The best shape he can be, highest level on his team. He's just going to go right on in to the enemy jungle, and they're going to engage this fight, taking out the Murad, who's caught out on his own. Meanwhile, Clash P on the backline just can't do anything against this enemy team because they cannot get back to the enemy backlines where they need to put the damage down, and Slim's soon to fall under his own turret.
So NatusVanguard, if they play that team comp right, they have a chance to just snowball really, really hard.
Ooh, but the Slim's going to miss the stun, pushing out the kill. We will have to see that indeed. And I believe that comes down to when they're together as a team, but right now they are not. They are getting caught out, jumped on. There's going to be Chris trying to push the enemy backways. The last one standing, and Zephys have rotated down. Slim's not quite able to join up as he is being held off by the Killgraph, but it won't matter. Zephys is enough to take down Valindus with the ultimate and change around as Lumber makes the rotation down, and they're just leaving it up to that of the Killgraph to solo Abyssal. He will be up to secure it for the team. And now NatusVanguard have a choice whether they want to go in for the engage. There's going to be the stun over the wall by Slims, but they get the turnaround. There's more not used, actually used onto Clash P, is able to stun them up. Two fights going on at once. The bot side will get that of the kill onto, I believe, the Zephys, so a big target followed by the Slim. Zenial joining in on the fight, able to turn this one around possibly, but trade-offs going down everywhere. It will be that of the Zenial to fall in place, and it's going to be Valindus getting caught out on her own. Is there next to the Killgraph, to the Crash, but it's about what it can do. Clash P with the trade out, with the double kill, is going to be able to escape from that to the bot lane, and now Malik is going to get taken out, so not want to get caught up in that, but here's going to be the rest of NatusVanguard on the sideline. Fuse coming in on the backline, but with the ultimate takes out one member, and is actually going to continue on through to the rest of his team, trying to turn this fight around for Natus, and they might be able to do just that. He's in the middle, but Lumber gets taken down, the tank for them, alongside Malik, who's going down next. Lindis just doing so much work for the team tower as well as the mid lane, and there's going to be the re-engagement coming through from the side of Norse with the ultimate from the Malik, but there's going to be Metamorphosis to push back the enemy team. Ultimate going through, and they pick up the kill onto Slims, but they do trade out. However, MeetYourMakers looking like they should be able to win this fight, could go through for the game, pushing Clash P back to the base. Actually, big pause with very little help, catching up with Malik. Meanwhile, they still have 3 members up of their own. They're going to go for the core, and game number 2 going over to MeetYourMakers and take this one for themselves, and they collect. There's going to be the engage coming through from Team Unknown. However, Superman going low, doesn't really have anything to fight with, is taken down for the first blood, and there's going to be Team Unknown trying to get a return kill. They catch out the Joker. Dexter going to be the next one to fall, as well as Blastoise getting taken down on that backline, and Team Unknown actually able to win out in terms of kills, only losing 1. It didn't really bode too well for them, but they're going to dive in onto this bottom lane tower, and they take down Cox, and they're going to take the tower, roaming the map and helping elsewhere.
Cool.
Gonna take the top tower, but he goes low in return. It looks like Superman probably just gonna back out this one, let the Yorn get taken down. He should be able to find the safety of this tower. So it's a tower for that out. The question is if they can steal. There's going to be a jump over the wall. Abyssal still low. There's going to be the Metamorphosis, the team going to come on through, but it still goes over to the side of ExDee Gaming, and there's going to be Kaz picking up the kill on the Feint. You can just see him over that wall with great positioning, not really being targeted himself over meanwhile, and instead there's going to be the Yorn going down. Kaz, about this positioning though, not too sure. He is going to get punished for it. L'Oreal still up, and this could be the turnaround coming through as Superman jumping onto the backline there, but there's going to be the shield coming that we actually first talked about, and they are more than likely going to get Murad going in once again with the ultimate. He's a clean up there for the objective, but it means he's not using it for damage in team fights, and we'll have to see how this plays out. Alice with the shield for her team. They should be able to back safely to the tower, but the tower no longer existing. Could be opportunity for Team Unknown, but you can see Zenial with a rotation down, very easily able to turn this team fight around. There's going to be the double kill for Kaz, possibly the triple, and they are going to go on through, and he's trying to chase down, go for the top high ground tower. Why not? But they instead decide to focus on this core. There's going to be the defense coming through from Team Unknown. Can they do something about it? Kaz is going to take down the L'Oreal. There's Alice going super low. The defense from the side of XD Gaming is gone, and this could be Team Unknown with the pushback. But over meanwhile, Murad took down that top tower solo, and it's going to find himself in a 1v1 with the Crash. Whether he can win it out, gets caught out in the Metamorphosis, but the rest of XD have moved on to the core. It's only Superman and the Crash up, but Yorn just coming back out of base. Pain on the court, where it used to be. Dexter going to be the one to dive on in, trying to finish off the Crystal, and they just need to do their best to push him back with the Metamorphosis, but it's one hit off the core, is one hit, and they're going for the fight.
For sure, Superman actually, Zaniel actually brings...
I requested, once again, joined by...
Well, you already do know I'm Luxure. Much more sustained answer as to what will come out of this, possibly the final set, the final game of this series.
Yeah, very much so in this best of 5. This game number 3, the first 2 going in favor of XD, very much so. And you could see XD, they definitely decided to change up their gameplay. Although they played a very great game number 1, they were struggling a bit at the end there to finish it off. And so they made a few adjustments to make sure they were able to then have a team comp where that was an option to them. And we saw that happen just as they finished the game number 2 under 11 minutes. So after that break, I'm sure both teams had even more time to recompose themselves, think about what strategies they need to do. But the eyes are really, the spotlight is on MeetYourMakers, whether they can make a comeback here and whether they are willing to make the change in their team comp, in their play style to really, I wouldn't say team comp, in fact, they've done pretty well in draft for the most part. But it comes down to the gameplay and the positioning, especially the roaming. We talked about for a team to match XD's aggression and roaming finesse, you have to have pretty much the exact same thing, and that's the only way you're going to come out even or on top of them. I mean, we have seen XD, they are humans and they can make mistakes. So that is one more opportunity for the side of MeetYourMakers to pick up on. But, you know, that's only if they're given to them. And I think in this kind of situation, XD are trying to play at the very best of their game here in the grand finals.
Well, yeah, I mean, XD do not want to have a prolonged game whatsoever, as we can tell quite obvious from the second set itself. In the first one, it's probably them testing waters and just seeing how MeetYourMakers can go and how far they can actually just deal with XD. But then when XD just have the game plan on, it is just so difficult for any teams out there to just go up against them. Like you mentioned, especially if you're playing the passive early game, it is just so difficult. You need to basically an eye for an eye XD, right? So when XD does this, you do the other thing to counter whatever XD is doing.
Yep. Well, we will see what they do in this draft, at least, as we go into the draft for game number 3 between XD Gaming and MeetYourMakers. This time XD once again returning to the left side, the blue, and we've got MeetYourMakers on your right, the red team. Praetor being banned out by XD and Superman being banned out by MeetYourMakers. So once again, going back to the very same strat as what they did in the first game. They ban out the Praetor, Superman gets banned out, and in return they pick up the Joker for Pain. Or perhaps not for Pain, for Kaz, but for the side of XD overall. And there's going to be the Zephys and Violet pick. So judging by this, compared to what we saw in the first game, we can say this is very much a second game comp that we see. they go for Joker, Zephyrus, and Violet. And this way, the Zephyrus Violet can then go around and jungle with the can go around and roam with the Observer that they pick up. But the Crash has been locked away from them by MeetYourMakers. But MeetYourMakers deciding to go for the Kaz pick once again. And in turn, Blastoise sees the Crash has been picked up and is going to go for that Alice. Now, you did mention something here. The fact that when you ExDee pick up the Alice, Blastoise is an amazing Alice player, yet it's not really the initiation they need.
Yep, I mean, definitely, I mean, Alice's kid do not have the initiate, but then, with this particular team comp, what differs from this compared to the second game is simply just the fact that they have a Zephyrus around. So Zephyrus will go in with Death from Above, or maybe just charge in, and then you have Alice with the backline support, and on top of that you have Lubu that can actually go in as well. Obviously, Kaz on that Joker will be left to do Joker things like push, but otherwise their team comp looks relatively similar. Obviously, they don't have the good zone control like that of Crashed, but even then you do realize one thing though. The side of ExDee Gaming, they've never, ever, ever prioritized on that Crashed or Alice like other teams have. So in the second draft, right, in the second game's draft, you saw Crash getting picked in the last as the last hero. As for the other teams, they constantly pick up Crash in the second or the third hero because they really prioritize the Crash. Whereas for Blastoise, he's so comfortable on that Alice, and then if the team comps allow it for it to happen, like when you have a Zephyrus, you have a Lupu that can tank the front line, then of course you can just pick on an Alice for yourself to just have the backline support.
Yeah, well, I think the team comp to really look at here is more the side of MeetYourMakers. Nothing surprising coming out of ExDee at all. You've explained all to the reasoning as to why. But for the side of MeetYourMakers, they had to pick up that Crash. They had to deny it from Blastoise because they at least then deny the engagement that they had. And I think this way, they might be looking at more of a similar game as to game number one. They might even be able to prolong it, and if they are able to, that is where we see MeetYourMakers start to get a bit of ground, get a bit of footing. And I think for them, we've seen previously they've gone up against teams like NatusVanguard in the semifinals, or yeah, I do believe, and they were able to just take control of the mid to late game. The problem here is they don't really get the chance to take control of the mid, and instead are forced to go to the very late game, holding on to their last breath, and then trying to make a possible comeback. So, I mean, MeetYourMakers obviously not in the best position again, but I did talk about that in this break. We had hoped that they had had a bit of team discussion and really noticed what they need to do. And judging by the draft, they're at least taking the first steps there. They've gone and taken the Crash away from that of ExDee Gaming, so they don't have such a strong initiation, and that might be the first step. The second would be to play that more aggressive early game, but we can't tell until we see them play. But with that, we are going to jump into what could be the final game, game number 3 between ExDee Gaming and MeetYourMakers here in the grand finals of the TES Arena Valor League. So here we go, and it's MeetYourMakers with their aggressive start. Going on to Dexter, I like this, pushing the Zephyrus back, and they're going to be able to secure the Might Golem for themselves. Now, the question here is whether they'll be able to make a rotation back to their own jungle and defend that from anything being stolen. And look at this, they're even going in for making sure they take everything on that top side out, except the closest, the jungle camp closest to mid, and the Zennial Crash then rotate up to their own Might buff. So great initial start from MeetYourMakers.
Yep, I'm really, really liking this start. I mean, when I saw that invade, I was just smiling. I mean, MeetYourMakers definitely, you know, letting ExDee Gaming have a taste of their own medicine, knowing what it feels like to have your Might Golem stolen away from you, and that you have nothing to do and nothing that you can possibly do. However, right, I mean, Dexter would get to level 4 much, much slower, which means he do not have the ultimate just yet. And on top of that as well, with a Zennial, Zenial against Lubu, it's very different to, like, say, compared to, say, Malak, right? When you have a Malak going up against a Lubu, Malak's early game is not as tanky. You cannot quite win in a 1v1 against, say, a Lubu. But when it comes to Zenial, when you have your health barrier, when you have your CCs, you can easily do that. And then you have the global presence as well as the Zenial.
Yeah, and I think that's what you have to give up to in terms of draft. I talked about this before, prior to the game, that MeetYourMakers are a team that, although we see ExDee Gaming coming in with the Abyssal Dragon, it gets stolen by Murad! Just going in and proving it in game number 3. If they can continue with this early game success, it might be a possible comeback, but we can only pray and hope. Now, going back to the team comp talk that we have with MeetYourMakers, is the fact that MeetYourMakers have never chosen necessarily bad team comp. They've taken the Zenial away from ExDee Gaming. That is another hero that allows ExDee Gaming to prove even better. We've seen so many times where ExDee use that Zenial to make these team fights, these aggressive plays, just work out that much more, and allows them to play more risky in a sense. So I really like what MeetYourMakers have done. I haven't been too sure personally on the Murad pick. I know it's great damage and all, but in this case, it was able to steal the Abyssal Dragon, which we've seen Murads do before, and is used in the same situation. But we see Shashwa. Murad jumps in onto Cosmo, and they're going to be putting the damage down in return. But this could be a dangerous engagement, as you see Cerberus up there on the backline, the Lubu, but the first blood will go in favor of MeetYourMakers. They're now rotating up to Cerberus. They're going to get a bit of damage down. He's tanky enough to back out of that, but they are putting the pressure down all around. You can see, however, Zephys did a good job of staying away from the team and realizing that, okay, well, if they're going to do this, I'll at least put the pressure in the bot lane, get that Seagull and the minions to push into tower. So I really got to give it to MeetYourMakers stepping up here. The question is, how long can they hold this, and how long will ExDee allow this to go on?
Yep, and this is something that it's really interesting, you know, for me to see. I mean, MeetYourMakers, they are actually starting to make plays right now. Even Abyssal Dragon, they are actually rotating down into Abyssal Dragon, and although the side of ExDee Gaming is camping there to try to catch out that of MeetYourMakers, I don't think it will be possible.
And Boss did get caught up in the stun, but no engagement coming from ExDee. It looks like Shiny could be in a bit of trouble as he's caught in the Dragon Pit, but ExDee are playing fairly safe. And up in the top lane, we actually see that Chipmunk winning out a duel against Cerberus. And what is this? What are we seeing? Are we just seeing MeetYourMakers? This is what happens if they play aggressively. I was looking in the break, and I was watching these clips of MeetYourMakers play against other teams, and they're all from the team fight stages late game, when you see such a composed team. And I feel like this is the stepping stone that MeetYourMakers need against ExDee, because we talked about before, they are a team that can really put up a fight against them if given the chance, but they have to be the ones to give themselves that chance. And that's what they're doing here in game number 3. So I'm just so interested to see how long this is going to work out, as Blastoise is getting jumped on there. And they have the pressure, they have the level advantage, level 7 on the L'Oreal as well as that of the Lindis. And then you see level 9 on that of the Murad. So it's just quite impressive to see, and I think you feel the same here. Watching MeetYourMakers is just like watching MeetYourMakers at a whole new level.
Yep, I mean, it is understandable, however, that, you know, they could have, should have, maybe should, you know, just place that, you know, Violet in that of the mid lane.
Ooh. However, Shashwa gonna get dived on. Violet diving over the wall, actually, and Love Pain doing some great solo plays here, some great micro plays, as they're able to actually trade out, almost picking up 2 kills, taking out Boss along the way, but Murad gonna instead jump around and then pick up the kill with the help of Valindis and Crash. So relying on that teamwork strategy, you can't forget that. Meanwhile, Zephyrus, once again, in the bot lane, pushing down that bot tower. Might be able to get with the minions, should be able to do so. So they are not at a loss yet, and in fact, ahead in terms of tower objectives. They are behind in 2 Abyssal Dragons, though. And speaking of, it looks like Crash could be starting up the 3rd.
Yep, and what really for the side of ExDee Gaming should have done, is actually... okay, remind me later. There you go.
Oh, I thought that was on my screen for a second. But no, do want to be reminded later. We are here in the grand finals. Do not remind me now, especially when MeetYourMakers are having a game where they're actually ahead. They've taken the 3rd Abyssal Dragon for themselves. They've yet to really take any towers. That bottom tower is fairly close to going down, and overall pressure has been great. You can see now the 3-man rotation down to this bot lane. Whether they decide to just dive on, get the tower, and then take out Dexter if he goes for a fight would be the question. Shiny X is there on the Crash with the ultimate, and it's going to be Zephyrus just making the call to back off. But now is the question, ExDee with a response. Are they going for the early Darkslayer buff? And I believe they are. Now, Chipmunk is going to spot that one out. The rest of MeetYourMakers are going to have to rotate onto this. But meanwhile, while Chipmunk spotted it out, he actually South Fall, taking way too much damage. Shashwat going to get baited in. They're going in 1 by 1. This is not what we want to see. But Murad coming along, and Alice going very Cerberus, but it's going to be Lug Pain. Gave the Darkslayer buff over. Whoa, Double Chill going over to Lindis. And MeetYourMakers not losing out completely, but they definitely weren't able to steal the Darkslayer buff. So ExDee doing a great job of going for the aggressive, risky plays, but the calculated plays. And you gotta give it to Love Pain on this Violet, not falling behind it at all. In fact, paving the way into that late game where she's only going to get stronger. Oh, and Shiny, we're going for the possible duel, but no, you do not want to accept that one. I would back off. I would decline. Take it from me, I know. And no, you're going to lose your tower instead, but not your life. He does get back with a sliver of HP, and now ExDee rotating to the Abyssal Dragon. That's up in another 5 seconds. So that one Darkslayer take, if it had been coordinated by MeetYourMakers to actually stop them and get the contest for it, they could have really continued the ride they were going on with the pressure and aggression. But now ExDee are back into it, and I would say ExDee are probably more than likely in a comfortable spot now. Start making a bit of a mess of MeetYourMakers.
Well, you say comfortable though, but Cerberus.
Nah, Cerberus is fine. He's Lubu. He can tank it. Meanwhile, we see Kaz taking out the Murad, pushing down the bot lane. Zephyrus is going to be there. Zephyrus pushing down the bot lane while Kaz takes out a kill. Probably going to pick up the Shashwat, pick up L'Oreal on Shashwat.
Ooh.
L'Oreal on Shashwat? Shashwat on L'Oreal. But it doesn't matter either way. Kaz doesn't care. He's going to go on through, picking up a kill for himself. And so is Love Pain. Look at the damage coming through from both these ADCs, the Joker as well as that of Violet. And Chipmunk cannot tank up anymore. Just slowed down into his turret. But that is going to be the return kill as they pick up the Zephyrus. Now, whether MeetYourMakers are going to prove us wrong, there comes the Murad. He needs to jump in with the ultimate. He has it up, but instead is going to blink back to where he started, and it might have been a team call there to not go in so deep, but it was a possible risky play I would have loved to see MeetYourMakers do to get themselves back in the lead.
Well, the thing about Murad is that it's easier if you fight in the mid lane, right? You have the spiders, you have the wolf to actually be able to stack up. Only when you have 4 stacks can you actually use your ultimate. So even if you have it off cooldown, it is not exactly a skill that it's constantly available as well. So at a point in time, he did not quite have the stacks just yet to actually utilize the ultimate at all, and thus having to back off. But even if he did, he will be able to TP back into the safety, right? He has a shadow there, so I guess he'll be fine. But even then, it would not be worth it per se to actually go in anyways. So that is one thing, obviously, that we have to note. But at this point, MeetYourMakers is actually faltering right now. Although he's supposed to be good, they're supposed to be good at least in this part of the game.
Well, they were good. They were doing great in the early I'm not sure if they're going to be able to make the comeback they need now. The Abyssal Dragon will go over to the side of XD, and there's going to be Onslaught picked up by the Violet as they take down the Murad, trying to kite back. You see them on the back line, no one actually able to dive onto them. And this is a bad situation. When your tank, the Crash, is backing off from a fight, you know that's definitely not going your way and will not continue to go your way, as that's going to be Violet continuing to push them back, and there's the rest of the team to help them pick up that bloodbath. And it's just XD, as I said, as soon as they got that Dark Slayer, they were back in. They were right in it. They got Dark Slayer onto Abyssal Dragon, and the timing couldn't have worked out any better for them. Now they're going to take the Tier 2 tower away from MeetYourMakers in the mid lane, and they might even look for that of the high ground tower. And we've talked about this Violet before, that she's just able to poke the tower down slowly but surely from afar, and that's going to go. It's going to go right over to them, and now we have to be careful here as Violet is actually in the enemy base, going to roll over that wall. It was very obvious to see, and there's going to be the Zephyrus also jumping up over. Meanwhile, you've got to remember that Lubu has been putting pressure up on the top lane, and now we are back to game number 1 in terms of where we stand. It's a very similar game in terms of team comps overall. I would say this time XD have more range, with the double ADC kind of mix up there, but it's this question of whether they can push that final high ground turret and tower, and whether they can find the engagement they need to end it out. If MeetYourMakers, we want them to play aggressive, but we talked about this before. It's very dangerous if they decide to play aggressive in this late game, because XD are the kind of team to either push right into your base and go for your core to end it all, or they are the team to wait and set up a bait, especially with Abyssal Dragon coming up, could be the possible bait, or Dark Slayer, even more reason to draw MeetYourMakers out.
Ooh, the top tier turret, however, that, you know, Violet just able to poke it down with no care whatsoever. Okay, well, there you go.
There we go. XD gained the high ground tower, and now they could just go all in. But my call for XD would be either go to Abyssal, whether you want to take it, whether you want to bait MeetYourMakers, you go to Abyssal, and then you go to Dark Slayer. Because once you get the Dark Slayer, you know XD are going in for the end. Now, the question I have for you, Luxuria, is what can MeetYourMakers do against that? I mean, it's not a laughing matter.
It is not. I'm trying my best not to. I'm trying to figure possible
last seconds, or last minutes, I should say, we'll give it to MeetYourMakers so that they can hold on that long. What can they do?
Well, hang on to the live support then. I mean,
when you tell Luxuria it's not a joke, man, he brings in jokes, he brings in the puns, but we'll see.
Okay, so okay, what they have to do? Okay, we can tell now that Lubu is obviously overextended, but because they do not have the vision of where the entirety of XD Gaming is, they cannot just jump on Lubu. Had they actually made the active choice to just jump on to Lubu, then they could have easily went in to vie for the Dark Slayer, right? Because they have the man advantage right now, but because they do not know, but crashed, and the rest maybe smelling something.
Yep, they do find Cerberus, but by the time they burn down that Cerberus, the rest of XD are going to show up. They will be able to pick up the kill, but Crash going to have to use the Metamorphosis. Is tanking up so much damage. Zenio actually diving in with the ultimate to save the Crash. This could be enough for them to turn around the team fight, but they need to get the Zephyrus down. They don't find the kill. Instead, Kaz, the Joker, picking up a kill onto that Zenio, and they're going to push on right through for the core. This is probably going to be it. The damage coming through between both the marksmen, that of the Violet and the Joker, is massive output, but Joker's still alive in the fight. Did find the Violet, but Joker there's the core, and XD Gaming will be your grand finalist for the TES Arena Valor League, and that is going to be it with XD just being XD. They came back. We saw MeetYourMakers. You gotta give it to them in that last game. GG, well played for such an aggressive early game. But as soon as they let XD get a hold of the reins, XD were there to turn it around without a further mistake.
What even was that? The killing joke working at it as it says. I mean, it killed you, and I made a joke before that. So, I mean, just look at this particular team fight here. So, Pain got really, really low, got taken down by Forsaken on that Lindis, and then the Bottle of Laughter, and then a killing joke goes in, boom! Ooh. And a basic attack to pick up that of the other guy, Zanio, I think. So
that other guy, and that's a triple kill for that of Kaz on the Joker. Kaz throughout this series has just done great work playing that Joker pick, whether it's been in the jungle or especially down in the bot lane, in both sidelines. I think that's where Kaz has the most effectiveness when you see him up in the side lanes pushing through. But it got to the point where it was so late game that they had the level advantage, they had the definite damage advantage. And I question to you with the Alice pickup in this draft, how are they going to make it happen? But you just told me, wow, this high damage output coming through from ExDee will surely be enough, and I see exactly why, especially when you love Pain, the other marksmen of the team had just such a great, I would say, game throughout. They were doing very well in terms of solo play, and overall ExDee were able to regain that and take it to 3-0 out of the best of 5, going home with that first place spot. And just GG well played to MeetYourMakers for that third game especially is where they blew away our expectations of them, and they really came out with what we wanted to see. It was only a shame that once again ExDee were one step ahead of them and were onto that Dark Slayer as soon as it was up.
You know, when you put pressure down, you have to be like ExDee. It should be consistent pressure, right? You cannot just go in for the mic buff in the early game and then back off, do your own thing, push the lane, do your own thing, and then you just kept going back to doing your own things rather than consistently put down the pressure. And that is why that I'm saying the way that ExDee plays, it's not just physically draining, it is mentally draining as well. It's obviously, I think it's just down to Blastoise's shoulders, right? Shot calling, understanding what is happening at which part of the thing, or which part of the map, and then with that, just able to just control the pace of the game. Granted, in the last game itself, MeetYourMakers did very, very well for themselves. They got the Abyssal Dragons, they got the lead that they won, they got the towers as well. Issue with that is that it isn't consistent at all. After a while, they just got tired of this very aggressive gameplay, and then they started to give like breathing space for the side of ExDee Gaming, and with that, an immediate take on the Dark Slayer, right? Taking the Dark Slayer, take the Abyssal Dragon, and bam, they are back into the game. They are rolling, although their items are still not up yet. But because of that, MeetYourMakers lost morality, basically the morale in total, and then ExDee can just go in and sweep, and they just gave ExDee more than breathing space.
Yeah, well, I had to think that MeetYourMakers, if they had coordinated that contest for the Dark Slayer a bit more, Zenial went right down at the start of it and kind of forced a bit of a panic engage from the rest of MeetYourMakers to make sure they didn't get it. And that is where we lost a bit of composure for a team as MeetYourMakers, which we can see as definitely is a team that can play at such a level and with such finesse and such a clean strategy and rotation. It was very much tested against a team like ExDee, who are on the aggressive side, and made sure they were not allowed to play the passive team comp that they're so used to. So with that, I really just give it up for both teams. Couldn't have asked for a better final game. Of course, maybe if MeetYourMakers made a full comeback and pushed it through to a best of 5. But for what MeetYourMakers were able to accomplish in the early game, I still congratulate them on that. But you talked about the ExDee pressure, the constant pressure. Even when they were behind, Zephys was still in that bot lane, slowly pushing it, slowly putting pressure on it. And I think that's the thing that kind of built up, because you saw that early game, then into late game, it was Boo in the top lane who was the one to then apply the pressure in the top. And of course, it was a similar. I said we're back in game 1, and then all of a sudden, ExDee were like, you know what? We realize, we learn, and we adapt. We realize that what happened in game 1, we weren't quick enough to then put pressure on this top tower. We weren't quick enough to then take a Dark Slayer of our own to go in with such aggression and that's what they did. It worked out for them, and all I can say is GG, well played, and congratulations.
Yep, I mean, good game, well played indeed. I don't know. Initially, I had doubts about ExDee Gaming putting Dexter on the Zephyrs in the bottom lane because of how much you get poked out by the Lindis and the Crash combo. But after a while, I just realized that, you know, like I mentioned this about before, that sometimes in your lane, it has to be the sacrificial lane. You sacrifice your lane in order to push and pressure other lanes, and ExDee just performed it really, really well. They responded, they did not react, right? So they knew that MeetYourMakers are going on aggression. What do? They stay back for a little, they farm up, and then bam! Once they have the items, once they find an opening, once MeetYourMakers lags out, they immediately go in for, you know, those big opportunities and then turn the game around. And here I am, actually expecting a reverse sweep coming out from MeetYourMakers.
Yep. I mean, with that start, I think a lot of MeetYourMakers fans were surely on the edge of their seat. I could tell you, I continue to mention, I wonder how long MeetYourMakers are going to hold this out. It wasn't as doubting them per se, but it's just like it was very uncharacteristic for the playstyle that they're used to, and I think was very straining on them. As you mentioned, the mental strain that goes through with that must be a lot as well. And with that, I think that MeetYourMakers, they played fantastically. If only they adapted, maybe in game number 2, we might have seen a bit more of a chance. But I think that break we had prior to game 3, they definitely had a bit of a discussion. And I hope for wherever they go on to after this tournament, that they continue to adapt and learn, because MeetYourMakers are definitely one of the top teams out there for the India region. And, well, you can give it to ExDee for being the first place winners of this league, and to be composed, as you mentioned, of so many high tier players themselves. And even I forgot who you mentioned it was from the side of MeetYourMakers that they actually pulled. But the fact, it just shows that MeetYourMakers is still up there and can fight with the best of them. So with that, I'd like to say, first of all, thanks to all the teams that participated in this tournament. And of course, to our sponsors, Tesseract Esports and Tencent Games, to the production behind there, to all the viewers who watched, and to my co-caster Luxuria. I've been I Requested You, and I hope you guys all enjoyed. And until next time, do take care.
To fight the greatest battle, you need the greatest warriors. But heroes must be forged in ultimate combat, competing for the ultimate prize.
eyes in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through?